Hey everyone, how are you and welcome to RPM. Not really, but that music definitely brought you back a few years, I imagine. It is the Stage by Stage live show. We do have a very special guest tonight, and if you're like me, that was a staple dat. Way back yonder, um, sorry, just something's happening here. Way back yonder in the RPM days where Motorsport filled our Thursday nights. We're a bit early for it at 7:30 when usually come on at 10:30 or even later. But hopefully that's got you excited for the show that we've got going forward from tonight. I will introduce the special guest a little bit later. But before we do that, just as usual, a couple of things. First off, welcome everybody to the show. Just remember to type into the comments where you're watching from. Any love you have for Mr. Plum Tyndall, of course, and RPM, all those memories, anything you want to share with us. This show's as much about you as it is about Plum and I as we go through tonight. So any of those comments, any thoughts you have, any memories that'll jog the man's mind, it won't take much to get him off and chatting about some of those rally stories we've got over the years. Not just rally, of course, there'll be plenty of motorsport and general stories, racing ones, which are very interesting. If you've heard some of the stories before, there's no harm in having a refresher because they're always good, they're always super value. And so that's the bulk of what we're going to do is just Plum telling stories as usual. So if you're watching live, as I say, get the comments in. If you're watching the recording, clearly that won't work. But yeah, so we'll do a couple of hours, I imagine, tonight as we go through this, definitely. So just a couple of things as usual. If you haven't seen any of the previous shows that we have, there's 7 of the most recent ones. Go to stagebystage.com/blog and you'll be able to pick all of them there. I've also released a new podcast today. That was with Henry Catchpole. If you don't know about Henry, you need to check him out. So if you've ever wanted to road test exotic road cars for a living, then that's the show for you. It definitely is a good one. So freelance writer Henry, he also is a presenter. He describes his journey on the show from loving car magazines, in particular Evo magazine, which he went on to actually work for. So presents road tests on the YouTube channel Carfaction. Of 900,000 subscribers. Most of his videos get over 1 million follows and views. So he's a renowned automotive journalist. As I say, worked for Evo, has worked and continues to work for Evo magazine for 15 years. He actually owns a 2-litre Pinto Mark II Escort as well, a proper rally nut. He did the British Championship, I think it was in 1998 if I remember right, or 2008 anyway, it was a while ago. He competes in national gravel rally still in that Mark II. So he offers some fantastic advice. So if you're thinking of your 15-year-old sat at home watching this and you're thinking that you want to follow in his footsteps, or even go on to work for Top Gear or any of those. He offers a great template for anybody who loves cars and wants to do that. So check it out on stagebystage.com/blog. On the blog as well, you've got all the shortcuts to anywhere where you download your podcasts. If you haven't ventured into podcasting yet, get someone to help you out because there's plenty in there that I think you'll enjoy. The difference between the podcast and the YouTube channel. YouTube channel, what we do on a Friday night, tell stories. The podcasts are educational, mostly to help you think of ideas, and we always come up with an action point at the end of each show to get you working on maybe following your passion in some way. So interviewing successful people who always turn out to be just like you and me, probably working class background, and they've managed to make it very big. So that's what that's all about. So have a look at that as we go through it. Right. This is just a quick listen to the podcast with Henry. So this will give you a flavour for it, folks.
In general, I wanted to work for Evo magazine. That was specific it was, which seems utterly crazy. You have to be prepared to be selfish and take the opportunities where they arise, even they might impact other parts of your life. Most people have a phone these days which can take fantastic videos, and so you can get used to presenting to camera, think of an idea and just present. The road testing side of it takes an awfully long time. It's what people, I think, aspire to, certainly what I aspired to, but it's probably not the thing to start out in terms of your writing or presenting. I love driving and I'm incredibly lucky. It is the most fantastic career. The highs so much higher than I think even I could ever have thought about. It's a big adventure and jolly exciting.
There you go, folks. If you're into that type of thing, definitely have a listen to it. It'll educate you, no doubt. Right, to tonight's guest then. So for the introduction, I'm going to thank Sammy Hamill in advance for this. I've taken it from an article he did in the Belfast Telegraph during Plum's book launch. So keep the revs up if you haven't got that book yet. You need to go and get it. It's an absolutely ripper of a read. My copy isn't behind me. I was looking for it today, so it's clearly we've moved house since I bought it, so it must be stored somewhere safe. That's safe that my wife can't find it either today. Okay, so he's a boarding school educated son of the Peace Bishop John Tyndall. He was a sewage plant architect, a dyslexic magazine editor, a PR pioneer, a DJ, a production saloon racing champion, a Grand Prix commentator, and more, but principally the man who put Irish motorsport on television. Absolutely. A natural raconteur who was once married to an ex-Lord Mayor's daughter. Tyndall's book is largely a light-hearted, sometimes ribald trip from the school days in Sligo and Fermanagh to selling cushions to Wimbledon spectators, from going behind the lines with an IRA pass in Ballymurphy and the Bogside during the Troubles, from fast talking at the top of the Kirkeston Race Circuit Tower to the commentary boxes at Monaco, Monza and Spa, from talented cartoonist to television production company owner. Alan Tyndall is all of these and known by all simply as Plum. How are you?
I'm great.
Does that about sum it up? That's just the first 20 years of your life, isn't it?
Did I do all that?
Apparently so.
Yeah, right.
Are you well?
Oh, we're great. Yeah, we're suffering a bit with lockdown, but we're about to move house, so that's keeping us well occupied, you know.
That'll keep you on your toes, all right. But you've moved house quite recently as well, haven't you?
Well, we're in a temporary place here at the moment. We're in a rented apartment, but we have a new apartment about to be completed in the next 3 weeks or so. So that's all quite exciting.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much for joining us tonight. The anticipation, the messages I've had in advance, everybody's looking forward to it. So it's a dead simple situation. Off you go. You've got 2 hours. Just give me a shout when you've finished and I'll come back in and turn the lights out, okay?
Very easy, very simple.
That'll work.
Yeah. I wish I could have got work like that over the years.
Yeah, yours paid a lot better than mine, probably. Right, let's have a look and see who's in tonight. So we'll start right at the top here. And Drew Hull, now there's a name we know.
Yeah.
Drew's got your Vauxhall, hasn't he?
He's got my droop snoot, BIL 1850, and he's got it in lovely condition. And in fact, he let me drive it a couple of years ago, and it brought back great memories.
That droop snoot was pedalled through Remelton, if I remember right, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah, there she is. Yeah.
That's the very boy there.
I don't know if you knew a great rally character, Maud Gray. She's still very much with us, and she was in the passenger seat. And rather than telling me to slow up, she was egging me on in that machine. They were an amazing car, but they were really a prototype. They weren't really a production car because they had a ZF box, and it was pretty quirky, really, because it used to sometimes jam a little bit and be very difficult at first to reverse, and it could be you could be stuck in a parking space for a minute or two till you got it sorted out.
You clearly must have forgot the Scandinavian flick going into that 90 left. They put a big bail up there last year so you wouldn't hit the wall. But
that's right. And the background is one of the many pubs of Remelton who did excellent business that day.
I'm sure they did. I actually did the rally sprint through Remelton. Do you remember those as well?
I do. I commentated at one. And in fact, in one of those pubs just down the hill there, they do a little thing. What was it called? Something special. And it was lethal cocktail. And we were on top of a roof and commentating. And what started off like being an 850 race at Mondello ended up as the Monaco Grand Prix, as these Harvey wallbangers or something like that went down. I think I had to be carried stretchered off the roof at the time, but it was a hell of a day.
Yeah, Yeah, because Fred Crawford won definitely the one I competed in with Paul Mulder. We finished third, I think, to him in the 1600 Mark II Escort.
Yeah.
But that was just a rally sprint through the streets of Melton using the exact same stage as they used on the International Rally. Those were definitely the days. And of course, we revisited that last year with Deja Vu, didn't we? That was an exciting day.
Oh, it was amazing. And thanks to the festival committee of Melton who made that all possible. And the cooperation we got from them was fantastic. For a start off, they gave every competitor a cup of tea. And then they marshaled the place and they went around all the residents and asked them not to park there on that day. And they were magnificent.
Oh, what memories it brought back as well. All the cars filling the harbour as well, and the exotic cars we had on that rally. On that tour. What do you call them? Do you call them tours?
Tours, yeah.
Tours.
Non-competitive,
okay.
Of course.
Non-competitive, of course.
Yeah,
And it definitely was through Melton. It was absolutely non-competitive.
Yeah.
Right, who else have we got? We've got Kyle Livingston from Mull. Hi, Kyle. Good to have you here. And Paddy Fitzpatrick's from Monaghan. William Neal's there watching near Market Hill. Good Market Hill, man. Good spot of the part of the world, that is. Sean's tuned in as usual. Good to have you here, Sean. Matt Prentice, bring back RPM. Those are the days. That theme music gives you goosebumps. It does. The theme music's incredible. So what's the tune again, Plum?
It's called Dangerous too. And we were when we were planning the program, I spent a whole weekend listening to stuff, and you get tone deaf after a while. And I remember it well. It was Sunday evening, and I put on this tune, and my wife Lynn was in the kitchen just close by, and I put this on, and she shrieked out, "That's it! That's it!" And that was it. And that lasted for 23 years. And a lovely little postscript, though, because we were in a lockdown family quiz recently. And one of the questions was name these famous TV tunes. And the kids had put the RPM music on. And Lynn and I looked at each other and we said, we know that tune. We know that tune. But we didn't get it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you loved your music.
Oh, yeah. Well, I as I said, I did a bit of DJing at one time. I really love music, but I loved rock and roll and all that. I grew up with all that, you know?
Yeah, because you've been on the Sprint podcast recently with Tommy Hayes and the boys, and they talked about it all the time, all the different tunes that you used on the RPMs. It was like they could remember the rallies by the tunes.
But it was very difficult because you were driving home from an event. I always had the radio on. You were always listening out for a suitable tune, you know. And there's so many of them are unsuitable, obviously. And I don't mean from a religious or sexual point of view or anything, but they're just not suitable music to cut rallying to. But now and then you'd suddenly come up with a gem, and that was really great, you know.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, we've got Michael Kimber. Looking forward to another entertaining few hours. Good to have you here, Michael. He's in Birmingham, I think. Now, Sean, good evening. All set for the long haul tonight. Trev, load of boys down there in Naas. Great. Kevin Lemster in Herefordshire. Of course it is Lemster. Where Mark Perrott come from, and also Theo Bangry. You remember Theo Bangry, don't you? He was a Lemster man.
Yes,
indeed. Mark Johnson loved the intro. Yeah, I thought you would. Did that especially for you, Mark Johnson. That's Alan Johnson's son, Plum, by the way. Remember Alan, Bruce Junior team?
Absolutely. Very much so.
Quick boy, wasn't he?
What a driver. What a driver. Yeah.
Yeah. Niall, evening Niall from Trillick. It's great. Gavin McMenamin's there, and no doubt the rest of the Furies and everybody be there. Hi, Trevor. Sean McCauston tuned in from sunny Port Stewart. Jeez, we're in trouble if the sun's shining at this time of the night. Keep the revs up, Plum. Emigrate members from the unique RPM coverage of Irish motorsport over the years. I think my teeth have fallen out tonight. Trying to get all this out. Rarick, good evening, everyone. Hopefully everybody's keeping safe and well so far anyway. Robin Luke, evening from the Scottish borders. They're all over. And of course, we've got the Snowman Rallython this weekend at Paul Glass sent me the info about last week, where they're raising money for charity on the weekend where the rally's supposed to be, including that Ari Vatanen t-shirt that was talked about. Hi, Gerard. Really looking forward to this one. Actually remembered to join in live and have it on the TV. Good man. Get it on the big screen and tell the family to go, and or they can join in with you, of course. Great to see Plum, one of motorsport's unsung heroes and PR people, and well done to you, Trevor, and the absolute fantastic work you're doing. Okay, it's not hard for me to do it, and when you've got guests like this, it's even easier. Drew, evening, we've done that. Still don't see a fan, so yeah. Gerard, loved RPM as a child. Shame it stopped. So why did you stop it? What was wrong with you, man?
We kept it going as long as we possibly could, to be quite honest with you. Probably, when it started, the whole idea was that UTV paid some of it, RT paid some of it, and the clubs paid some of it. So that was quite a bargain for everybody. Everybody was sort of paying a third of the price. And then it got a bit more sponsorship into it, and that sort of saved the clubs a bit, or sometimes. And then, gradually the TV companies began to dilute their contribution. And that's just the way TV went. And you ended up virtually having to pay to put it on the screen. So at the end of the day, although we were on sometimes 5 channels, we weren't getting paid one halfpenny for them. And some of their demands were incredible, because some of them working to different constraints in terms of quality. And so you had to make maybe 2 or 3 versions of it for these people to just keep up the numbers, keep it going, to justify the sponsorship. So it gradually petered out, and we were getting to the point we used to be able to take 3 crews, then we were down to 2 crews, and the one thing I wouldn't compromise was the safety. So I always had a guy with me, what we called a minder, with the cameraman. And when that became into jeopardy, I thought it's time to stop. And in fact, we probably kept it going 2 years longer than we should have done financially, for sure. But had some very loyal employees, and I wanted to hold on to them as long as I possibly could.
Yeah, top crew as well. You can give a shout out to some of those guys. The danger with that, I suppose, is if you get somebody, but I worked with a lot of them in 2016. We did the live stream for Bobby and the Circuit of Ireland. What a great bunch of people they were.
It was a family. RPM was a family, literally. We worked very hard, we played very hard, and we stayed together. And really, we had a lot of freelancers there. If a guy's face didn't fit, he wasn't asked back again. So we built up over the years a huge sort of core of loyal people. And then, of course, a whole core of volunteers as well that came with us. And the basic presenters like Gary Gillespie, Pamela Ballantyne, those people, the UTV people. And then you had a string of others over the years that behind the scenes with Paul McCauley, absolutely invaluable. My wife Lynn, of course. You had Andrew Bush, who was employee. The 2 sons were in and out of the business at some stage. And then, as I say, you had a regular bunch of cameramen. I used to grade them, sort of Formula 1, Formula 2, and Formula 3. Uh-huh. A Formula 1 guy, you could put anywhere and he'd give you good pictures. You could put him in a lousy spot and he'd give you good pictures. The Formula 3 guy, you had to get him a really good spot to get the return. But, and then people like Alan Souter, who stayed with us all through the years as a cameraman,
Yeah. But the volunteers, as you say, you got a Willie McKee, you got Morris Hamilton who come over. I remember Morris in Galway, just for the crack. And it's something I regret, actually. I should have actually asked you about that as well when everything was working, just to go along for a weekend's crack and get dug in, get in the trenches, do the work and have a bit of crack, as you say. A nice dinner and a few beers would have been lovely.
Dave O'Connell was a very regular with us. He did the bannering. And of course, Dave very, very sadly and very suddenly lost his wife, Jackie, recently, which was a total shock to us all. Yeah.
No, condolences. That's horrible, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jimmy Ogg. I'm leaving people out. Of course, Robbie Beggs, just all the regulars, so many of them. And I do apologize for leaving the odd one out.
Of course, over 20 odd years, it's inevitable, Plum. Don't worry about that. Okay, who else have we got here? We've got Kevin O'Driscoll. Okay, just to give you a heads up on what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks, folks. Next Friday night, I'm very excited in that we're getting Kenny McKinstry back for a full show on Kenny alone. Not just Kenny, though. We've tracked down Robbie Philpott, and Robbie Philpott's coming on, so that's going to be really good fun. tracking down him and getting just some of the stories. You remember the stories of the Caliber teams and everything going on then, Plum. It was just mega, wasn't it?
Well, the Caliber team took me to Barbados for the first time, and that started a whole what would you say, a relationship with that island that was just magic, you know. And
is it not fair to say you took them?
Well, I suppose so, yeah, because we had a thing. We're jumping about all over the place here, but I suppose that's what we want to do. We had a thing going called Formula Friendly, which was a lot of menopausal men like myself at the time, all in our sort of 50s, early 60s, who wanted to do a bit of proper racing before it was too late, you know. And I discovered there was a bunch up in County Antrim, the Woodsides and the late Larry Scarlett and people like that, who had actually bought Formula Fords and were just chugging around with them in practice days at Nuts Corner. And so I went out and I bought a 32F. And in fact, good opportunity to show it to you because I have a beautiful model.
Oh, look at that.
That a man presented me with only quite recently. Well, I'll put it
just
up.
Pull it back a little bit, Plum. Pull it back towards you. That's it. Yeah,
revolve it a bit, but it really is a beautiful detailed model. And that became the family chariot, you could say, because I raced it, and my son Patrick then raced it, and then Christopher raced it and won the pre-82 championship. He was the quickest of all.
Wow.
But I'm going off theme here. We're going back to Barbados. We always had to it was compulsory to have a dinner the night after whatever event we did, be it sprint, hill climb, or race meeting. And we were in Nace at a dinner in the Manor Inn. And Gabriel Koenig, who you will remember of rallying fame, she came along and she brought two friends from Barbados. She used to live out in the West Indies. And they walked in, they announced themselves, and we all fell off the table because here was a very obviously white couple speaking in a broad Bayesian accent. You know, it was just amazing the first time you ever heard it. So anyway, that all went very well and they enjoyed it. And about a month later, I was in my office in Belfast and the phone rang and he said, "You probably won't remember me." I said, Andrew, how are you? He said, "How did you know it was me?" I said, "I tell you what it is, Plum. We've got a championship out here and we have no foreigners out here to compete against. I want you to find a shit-hot car and a shit-hot driver and somebody has no preference for drinking milk." So we found Robbie and Kenny and Caliber paid a bit of the money of shipping the car out. And that started a legend because Kenny won. Yeah. And it wasn't easy to win because they were damn good out there, you know.
Ask Chris Meek about that.
Exactly, yeah, and a lot of others that have tried and failed. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So we didn't even get to Kevin. So Kevin is involved in Galway Motor Club now, but of course he's from West Cork. So the Cork Motor Club have approached us to do something for the weekend after. So we're talking about the 19th. Similar to what we did with the Galway Rally for the 50th anniversary. We were going to get a few competitors and organisers from the West Cork Rally over the years. Going to get them together in a one-off special again. And we'll do that, as I said, in 2 weeks' time tonight. So Kevin is doing a fantastic job organising some people. And as we get those people confirmed, we'll start announcing as we go through it. So that's something exciting to look forward to.
No better man than Kevin, because he's what I would describe as one of the 2 or 3 walking encyclopedias in motorsport in Ireland.
Yeah, and of course he helped because you were involved in the book that we were talking about, which they gave away as part of those celebrations a few weeks back. And Kevin and you were coordinating that, Plum, is that fair?
Yeah, and he's helping me on a follow-up to that, which will be about the 2 Cork rallies combined.
Excellent. Okay, I look forward to that. Who else have we got then? We've got Christopher Douglas. Hi, Trevor. It's going to be a great one, hopefully. A few people just sharing, which is great. Plum should have some good stories. I don't know where you get that idea from, Derek McGeehan. Anthony Silver South Ray, what a top name. Good evening. All this will burn the lockdown tonight. I think it will. It'll storm through it, and we'll definitely see the light at the end of the tunnel. Can RPM come back? I've had a load of that. Kieran O'Neill, oh no, not that scud on TV again. Keeping the revs up, it's a theme. Great to see you, Plum. Between yourself and Auntie Pam B, we have great rally stories over the years and memories, especially we trip to Barbados for young Hoggy and the Evo 6 tubs from Mark Hanna. Is there a story in there that you can quickly tell?
Plenty, yeah. Tubbsy and his erstwhile driver. Always great supporters, really terrific. And of course, they fitted into Barbados absolutely perfectly. It's party land, with a little bit of rallying thrown in. And they had a ball. I think they only visited once, but it was a very memorable visit in a Group N car, I think. Yeah.
It's definitely one of those bucket list ideas. Ryan Champion's been on me all the time to go. Ryan's gone out in many, many years.
Yeah.
And everybody that goes just absolutely loves it. Bex Williams, the weed, she gets a job out there. She gets paid to go. How cool is that? Right, last week's guest, Bobby Willis, the whole of Irish Motorsport owes so much to Plum. Here. If you get this finished in 2 hours, you'll only have heard a few of the stories. Definitely, if we got it finished by Sunday night, we'd only have heard a few of the stories. Rosemary Walsh, great to see you, Plum. These people.
She's an old neighbour in Eden Trillick Road. Lovely,
really?
Rosemary, thank you.
There you go. Dave Welford over in England. Hi, Trevor and Plum. Just about completed the RPM Rally DVD collection. Well, Dave is an absolute Gold Star fan, big fan of Richard Burns. So he's got through it. That's good work. Hi, Doc. Can't say or can't stay. Hopefully you can stay. A bit more tagging going on there, which is great. A real treat. It definitely is a real treat. Hi, James. Before lockdown began, I wrote a letter to Plum and he replied back. Thankfully, we still keep in touch. An absolute gentleman. There you go. He's still writing letters in, Plum. That's great.
Yeah, James Dolan, I think, is a young gentleman who did RPM, I think, as a project, and he's been writing a couple of times. And we're hoping to meet him in when we go to Westport for the Deja Vu Island West.
Fabulous. We'll get to talk about that later. James, thanks for that. I see you're watching on YouTube. It's great. Hi, Laura. Great to see you too. Sean Tracy. Plum is the most innovative man in Irish motorsport from the great days of RPM to the festival speed at Stormont, currently Deja Vu. What a journey. That festival speed, we'll definitely get to that. It's probably the highlight of your career, I'd have thought. It's very close to it,
definitely, yeah. And Sean, that's going to be a few pints for him now.
Twin Cam Ireland evening, Trevor and Plum, true legend. He's the Murray Walker of Irish motorsport. Lots of people have said the same and messages to me.
I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you a story against myself. When I started doing a few commentaries on Grand Prix for RTE, we came back after one trip and I met this guy on the street and he says, "Oh, Jesus, Plum, great commentary, great commentary." He says, when ITV went to the ads, we went straight over to you.
Excellent. Did you spend much time with Murray over the years?
A number of occasions, yeah. I had a wonderful time. One time I subbed for him. It was a race of champions at Brands Hatch, which was a kind of late addition to the calendar. And I was down to do it for RTE, and Murray was there to do it for BBC. But it was the same weekend as a pre-commitment he had, and that was for the European Rallycross Championship at Liddon Hill. So he couldn't do that. And they asked me if I would sub for him. So I was able to, I didn't need to do all the practices and everything in the Grand Prix. I was just doing the Sunday Grand Prix, and Liddon Hill just down the road from Brands, as you know. Yep. So I was able to go down to Liddon, do it, and then come back and do the Grand Prix. But Murray gave me all his notes, and we spent, a good 2 hours together, gathering all the information, and particularly the pronunciations, because they were a nightmare. They were all nitty-mackies and, jeepers, definitely not Irish, So I more or less got away with it, but I got caught out on one thing, and that was on two things, actually. We were just in a little sort of chicken hut, and there was nobody else in the place. There was a telephone, a lip microphone, and me, and a very small monitor, which I was watching. And I was rabbiting away about Porsches, about Porsches. And this phone rang, and I was live on air, and I didn't know what to do. So I buried the microphone in my chest, picked up the phone, and the chap said, "Porsche, Great Britain here, not Porsche."
Yeah.
That was number one lesson. Number two was later on that afternoon, there was a heat, and it was a pretty dull heat. And I used to have all these little crib cards that I had in sort of an index. And the heat had spread out a little bit. And I was looking down at this card, and this is Norwegian champion or something. And I was giving the history of this guy and not watching the screen. And as I was looking at my card, on the screen was this wheel going through the air. It had come off one of the cars. And of course, I looked up, and in my excitement, I said, "It's a wheel! It's a wheel!" In an Irish accent on British television.
Yeah.
And that actually made the personality, the sports personality of the year, blunders of the year.
Oh, good one.
So I've been on the sports personality of the year.
See, there we go. You definitely deserve to be on any personality of the year. Yeah, interesting. And those complicated names, we tended to simplify some of them when they came over to our wee country, didn't we? I'm just thinking of Alan O'Reilly, became Alan O'Reilly. Tappy O'Larkinen, of course. What others? Can you remember any more?
Oh, let me think now.
Sid.
Jack, it was in Formula One, there was Jack O'Malley and Pat Tracy. So there was a whole host of them. Yeah.
You have to Celtify them when they come over here. All right. Evening, looking forward to this one as well. Hi, Al. Good to have you here. Plum, you're a living legend. So glad to call you a close friend over many, many years of RPM. Best wishes from the best bannerman in history, Doc Nace.
Yeah. Mentioned him earlier. Yep.
Yeah. Great. Richard Hogg is here. Great to see you, Plum. One of the best interviewers around, and always turned up when you were in handling.
Well, it wasn't hard to find. It wasn't find Hoggy. He was always in the handling.
Always in the handling. I think a few people commented. He put that post on Facebook, and there's a few others said the same thing. But that's part of it, isn't it? That's part of what you did.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, you had Kieran O'Neill on there, and we caught him out every time. Every time he had a spin or something, it seemed that RPM were there, and that's when he came out of the phrase. When we walked up with the camera, he says, "You're a bloody scud, Tyndall."
Always. Yeah. So you'd all the excuses come out then, of course, as well, didn't you? Like nobody ever went off. Nobody ever had a puncture because it was their fault. It was none of that. It was alternator failure when they knocked it off the side of the block, wasn't it?
Yeah.
After they hit the tree.
That was half the fun of it, actually, sort of reading between the lines, And there was notorious people like Austin McHale. You always knew there might be a little hidden story there somewhere, And somebody once said, of course it wasn't me. You always knew when Austin was telling a little... what would we say? A little divergence, and that was
there was a little bit of a smile, a cheeky smile with Austin anytime he was up there.
That's right. Yeah. And so I used to love getting under those and sort of getting around them. And the famous one was on the circuit when he took the back window out of the Monza. You remember that, to lighten it? And of course, we caught up with him at Dundalk service, and I said, "What happened, Austin?" "Oh, Plum." A big jump, he said, just popped out. A good clean break, Austin, the hinges weren't damaged or anything, And said, "Oh, yeah, we're very fortunate. Yeah, very fortunate." I said, "Well, would that be a heavy thing, I wouldn't know." I said, "Your problem now is, of course, we're Easter Saturday. You're not going to get one of those till Monday,
Of course.
He says, "Oh, we a feeler out, And after he'd done the interview, he grabbed me by the throat. He says, "Yeah, bugger," he says.
Yeah, it's funny, a lot of people would have been fairly quaky trying to interview Austin, but it's the old adage. We were talking about this the other day when it comes to commentating, when it comes to interviewing people especially. You got to show them that you're not afraid of them, I think.
Well, it was warts and all, as I always said. We will praise you when you deserve praise, and when you've done wrong, you'll be criticised. And I had a few little altercations with Andrew Nesbitt over that, but he was always very fair. There was one particular one in Donegal where he didn't want to speak to me. He would only let George Miller, his co-driver, speak to me. And in fairness to him, that night he drove all the way from Rosapenna into Letterkenny to apologise. And of course, we've been great friends ever since.
Yeah, yeah. As you are with Austin and a lot of those guys. That's the beauty about it. If you're fair, you do your job properly, people respect you for what you do. It's fine. Okay, class, bring back RPM. Marty McCormick's here. I grew up watching RPM. Great to see Plum, didn't we all? Fantastic.
There was a sideways man and a half.
Marty,
oh yeah, absolutely.
incredible, isn't it? So he only knows how to drive one way, and Niall McShea the same, which is great to see. With Niall on a couple of weeks ago as well, Plum. I don't know if you saw that one. Niall was on for a couple of hours.
No, again, I didn't see it, but I'll look it up. Yeah.
Telling loads of stories. Ireland's forgotten world champion is brilliant. Okay, Seamus McGettigan. Now, I'm sure the two of you might have stood toe to toe at the bar of the Ballyrain before it became the Mount Errigal even.
Well, Donegal has been my greatest love in Irish motorsport. My association with Donegal almost from the very beginning. I commentated the very first time. The first time I commentated on a rally was at the start in Rosapenna, the very first Donegal Rally, 72, I think, was it? Yeah. And I've been associated with virtually ever since until recent times, but I never miss it. I love the people, I love the event, and I love the times we've had up there.
And Deja Vu in Donegal 2 years ago now, whatever, 3 years ago, I'm losing touch, but very, very special, based in Jackson's Hotel in Ballybuffet. It was just amazing. Angus Watt and I went over, and Angus will tell you to this day the welcome we got from we arrived on the Friday night until we left on the Sunday, and just absolutely the way Donegal does things, it was fab.
Well, the event just couldn't have gone wrong in Donegal. We knew we were on a winner. It's going to be a difficult one to follow it, but I think we've got a pretty exceptional route for Deja Vu Ireland West.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that later on. Again, huge amounts of money being raised for charity with you and BT. We'll talk about Deja Vu definitely as we go through it. Right, who else have we got here? Billy McMullen. Hi from Mill Street, Cork. Plum, the voice of Irish motorsport. You must get that all the time. People coming up to you talking about the memories. Let me think. When was my first memory of you? It probably was Boyd's Quarry Rallycross.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, those were rough events, but very spectacular.
Yeah. Well, that would have been on. That would have gone out live on Grandstand in Northern Ireland.
Yes, it did.
The commentary would have been in the quarry as well, then, because I used to go to them.
We used to have they built us a hut in the middle of the quarry, which always leaked. But it went out live, always. Yeah.
Yeah. So we never saw the TV because there's no way to record it back then. If you were there, you were there.
Well, you'll get bits of it cropping up on YouTube.
You do, yeah. Of course you do. Now, but great days as well. The Mini-Men, Ronnie White, Richard Douglas. Who else in the early days?
You had Martin Shanker there, and you had. There was I'm just trying to remember his name. It was a great guy. Always came over from Neath in Wales. Top driver, escort. For the name escapes me. A lovely gentleman, and he drove a bus and he drove a funeral car.
Oh, right, okay.
And he rallycrossed.
Wow, okay. It wasn't John Welsh or something like that, no. Anyway.
No, but John Welsh was there.
Yeah, and you'd Will Gollop clearly with a Saab. I remember when it came,
that's right.
Blew everybody away. But yeah,
that's right. And John Taylor, he came.
Yeah.
He commentated with me actually on it.
Did he?
Yeah.
How did you find him?
I find John okay. I mean, John could be a bit prickly, I think, at times.
Yeah,
but,
of course.
I've never had a problem with him. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Sean. Good to see you. Dennis Farrell's watching. Hi, Dennis. And hello, Cynthia Fury. Just talking to Donegal, eh? So the whole Fury family's in the house. Good man, Plum. Sure, Ivan's there with Cynthia. Looking great and younger. Lockdown must suit you. What are you doing with yourself then?
Sorry, just looking at one of your things, Paddy Byrne, he was one of our family, RPM family, helped us out many a time, lives in Nace. He did a lot of the racing with us, and known as Paddy Glass. Yeah.
Right.
What am I doing in lockdown?
What are you doing in general? What's life? What keeps you busy nowadays?
Well, the moving the house is a big thing at the moment, but on motorsport terms, just writing really, I suppose. That's I'm really enjoying that, doing these rally books, and I'm writing a an autobiography for a friend of mine, just nothing to do with motorsport at the moment. So that keeps me well amused. If I'm in a car or at a typewriter, I'm a happy man.
Good man. Yeah, some of the stories you were putting on Facebook are maybe a year ago or a few months ago anyway. Very entertaining, some of those memoirs as well. David Kingham, yes, totally. We're a family, so that must have been another one.
Absolutely regular, Davey.
They're all coming in now. And Ray Cunningham, good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, Ray.
Mr. Mini.
Mini Men, are in. Eddie Doherty, you need to be watching this. Stocky's here. Trevor and Plum, great to hear that voice again. Had a good run in with Plum on the way to Sligo Rally 1985 in the 205 GTIs. That sounds
I'm amazed to see that name because I never knew who he was. We stopped at a filling station in Enniskillen and I had a Peugeot 205 GTI.
Yeah.
And this guy drove in and we never said a word and we filled up and we headed out the Sligo Road. And I don't know if you know that road from Enniskillen to Sligo. It is incredible. It's a fabulous road. Well, I was just ahead of him and I started off and I looked in the mirror. Could I get rid of that bloody little car? I drove my brains out that day to try and lose him. And eventually he slackened back because there's an almighty jump just outside Manor Hamilton. And he mustn't have known about it. But I could see, I looked in the mirror, I sort of feathered it over it. I looked in the mirror and I saw this thing in the air and I thought, I'll keep him quiet for a while, you know. So that's who it is. It's Raymond Stockman.
Do you know Raymond at all, no?
I don't think so.
If it's the same Raymond Stockman, I'm thinking he's friends of Alan Bolton, Jim McCracken, those guys, Mara Feltman, and and no doubt he'll let us know in a second if that's who he is, because it could be clearly more than one Raymond Stockman. Yeah, so that road definitely was a bit dodgy in places. One right-hander, the Titan, to remember, which is close to a pub.
I remember the entire Ulster Automobile Club committee nearly went into a field there on one circuit of Ireland one very slippery morning. And they'd all borrowed cars, and I can't remember what make they were, but they were all sitting in the field, and the UAC looking a little bit perturbed.
I remember, I see if I can remember this properly. It was the Sligo Rally, clearly, on the way to it with Tom Gribben. Would you remember Tom Gribben from Dromore direction? He had a 1300 Mark II Escort, a BDA. And we were towing the car, I think it was in a Peugeot 504 with an air bracket on it. But one of those right-handers at Titan nearly caught us out. I remember that as I went through it. George, you were talking about him earlier, George co-drove him as well. So I
want to pick you up on one little thing earlier.
Yeah.
The voice of Irish motorsport.
Right.
Well, really, the voice of Irish motorsport was Robin Rhodes.
Robin Rhodes, yeah.
He was the commentator at Phoenix Park and Mondello. Brilliant commentator. And I have to say, I learned an awful lot off Robin over the years. And he was really the original, known as the voice of Irish motorsport.
Yeah. I think there's certainly a generation that won't have heard of Robin and his commentating, but I think that's what a lot of these people are alluding to here as we go through it. JP Lowe, great show, Trevor. Fantastic listening to Plum. It is. It's amazing. Famous theme tune, famous voice. Thanks for all the memory, Plum. We could be here forever, Plum, but we'll keep going. And guess what? This will be good, hopefully. And Big Robbie McGurk's and he reckons you're looking good.
There's some guy for driving.
Robbie. Yeah, we would talk about Robbie quite often on this show. And
Mr. Bushwhacker, wasn't he?
Mr. Bushwhacker, yeah. So he says anyway. I don't know if he's that quick. Hi, Plum from Ronnie. I'm June Ronnie McCartney's daughter. There we go. RJ's daughter's in the house.
Wonderful Ronnie. I could tell you some stories about Ronnie now.
Quite whatever, yeah. With Desi on the show for the Galway rally, Desi being the only guy who's won the driver and passenger seat of a car in the Galway rally. So he co-drove RJ in 72 when they won it in the Triumph, the 2.5 PI.
Well, I used to, I'll make it quick, but I used to run a mile from Ronnie because he would pester you, he'd always tell him about what he'd done and what he'd not done, and his brother Desi, and he'd won the circuit in 64 and 70 pints of oil, the whole thing. And you sort of, as a press man, you shied away from it. But for my 50th birthday, my wife arranged they were going to the Daytona 500. And so I was in Ronnie's party, and I got to know him really well. And I was really glad that I did, because what a lovely, lovely guy. What a character, you know. And so much so that it completely reversed my opinion of him. And I was so privileged he asked me to speak at his funeral, you know. So very, very, very happy memories of Ronnie.
Yeah, and I told the story on that night about as a 14-year-old writing a letter for him, or to him, hoping to co-drive him back then, but that didn't work out. Yeah, so was that the Daytona where the big blag happened?
Big blag?
Big blag, as in getting into the inner sanctums of Daytona. There's something I remember you were there with James from Motorsport and a few. Was it Daytona?
Well,
somewhere?
Yeah, it could have been. Well, it was, Gordon Anderson was our mutual friend who lives out there from Dungannon.
Yeah.
And so Gordon, we were at Daytona again about 3 years ago, I think it was. And he got his pit passes and everything for that. Yeah.
There's something in the back of my mind. You, James Greer, a few others that went to an event. I'm sure it was in the States, but it might come back to me later on.
Yeah.
Anyway, Chris McLean, these Friday nights are as regular now as the navigation rallies back in the day. Great crack, yeah. And Saturday nights, some people would do them as well. Brian Byrne, absolutely loved Plum. Grew up watching RPM from the age of 8 years of age. And the first rally I seen on TV was the 91 Circuit of Ireland. A legend in Irish rally. And so McRae would have been on that Circuit of Ireland, I think, in the Legacy. Maybe. Nigel Fraser says, Austin's lad, can vouch for the RPM crack. Lucky to ever get out of the Azores, and I was in their company. All right, that's got to be a story then.
We wouldn't have got out of the Azores if it hadn't been for Nigel. That's the story there.
Right, go on then.
We were taken out to cover Niall McShay in the event.
Okay.
And he was on a deal with the tourist board. And these two Mitsubishis were being supplied by, now this was the strange thing, Mitsubishi Italia, but it was based in France.
Okay.
And I thought that was a bit strange. Anyway, it's a very protracted story, but a very quick version of it. The cars looked magnificent, but they were half the cars that it should have been. They were all show and no performance. They had all the wrong suspension in them and everything else. And it was a travesty. And the tourist board had paid for all this. I think they got stung badly.
Wow.
But so poor Niall didn't get very far that time. But the boys who were with, it was Paddy, my son, and who else was? There was about 4 or 5 of us. And my daughter Kathy was with us. And anyway, they went on the tear on the Sunday night. To this club, and I backed out early because we had a really early flight the next morning, and so I set my alarm it was about 4:30 or 5 o'clock, and they had about 10 minutes in bed at this stage, and Nigel was with us, Nigel Fraser, he was with us, and he was sort of semi-sober, and anyway, he managed to get them all into a taxi and down the road to the hotel, to the airport, which is only about 5 minutes away. And we were trying to get Niall and all that were absolutely out of their trees, trying to get them through customs and on into the lounge. And the most sensible one, Nigel, suddenly realized he'd left his passport in the hotel. So
that old chestnut.
Yeah. So we took his luggage through, and he went back and came back, and luckily the flight was delayed. And Nigel now. His luggage was on on air side, you know, and he was on land side, but he just walked through. There was no security. He just walked straight through. That would never happen today. Anyway, he managed to get us off the island. I hid, and we got rid of them finally.
Cool. Who else we got? Jim. Hi, June. Hope you're all well. Oh, they're just chatting to each other here. This is great. Don't mind us. Hi, Plum. Good to see you. Jamie Miller.
Oh, you're Jamie from Scotland.
That'll be Alistair's.
Alistair's son. We used to call him Miller Light.
Loving it. There's Andrew in now. Plum, some of the best times in life of RPM at Eden Trillic Road. Team RPM, some team. definitely are. Damien
He,
Garvey.
he was our reference point, Andrew. Still is.
Go on, tell me more. What do you mean reference point?
Well, he knows it all. He was born with a number plate, and I think when he was about 2 months old, his mother showed him a number plate, and that was Damascus, road to Damascus. He just converted to rallying ever since, and he's just an amazing knowledge. Yeah, good guy.
Good guy, yeah, and rallied a Saxo as well, which was great. So good sounding car. Hi, Damien. Great to see Plum. It is, yeah. Feet up and going nowhere. That's the style, Marty. We've even got the permission slip signed. Yeah, it's shaping up to be a good show. We're 50 minutes in. Can you believe that? Nearly the first hour done. Missed the TV coverage of RPM. Get back on our television. Kenny and Castleberg. We're going to talk about the Castleberg in a second as well. This thing's just jumped. That's all we need now. Right, where have we got to? Avril Morton. Hi, Avril. Great childhood memories. 10:40 on a Thursday night as a kid. Definitely. A lot of people are the same. Plum is a legend in Irish motorsport. Keep the revs up. We always got more excited about the rally programs and the race ones, but we always watch the race programs as well, Plum.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's funny because, racing in Ireland, well, before RPM, but it was at a very high standard. I mean, Formula Atlantic and all that, Phoenix Park, they were brilliant meetings. But the extraordinary thing is, we have hardly ever sold a race DVD in the entire existence of RPM. And we've some great coverage there, history of Phoenix Park and some great Modelo races, and stuff like that. But it's all rallying, rally. Yeah.
Really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like the Leinster Trophy and even the Unos around Modelo Park. There's some proper battles there.
Those Super Race Sundays, they were really good. And those supercar saloons, they were fantastic,
What about the 2CV 24-hour race? I know Angus is watching. He came over for that. The 24-hour, have you been there, done that, yeah?
We did it. We covered it one year. Yeah. And I don't know if I'd like to do it. Because they're very physical things to drive. There's no power steering or anything in them. But the really serious guys had 3 engines there.
Yeah, I know. But I think the driving was an incidental thing that you had to do. It wasn't the driving a lot of people went for. Okay. Jerry O'Brien, Clare Motor Club. Great to see Plum Tyndall. Between himself and the late Dougie Hughes, 2 massive PR people for Irish motorsport. Yeah, let's have just a few words about Dougie.
Dougie was immense.
Incredible, wasn't he?
Dougie was not always 100% right in the facts, but it didn't matter. He just kept the flow going, and he was so popular, and he just went everywhere for virtually nothing. And I don't know how many events he did a year. It must have been in the 30s or 40s. Incredible. He was at everything, and he would drive from the Harvest Rally in one day down to some other one sprint the next day, the far end of the country. It was amazing.
Legend, absolute legend. Simon Mooney's here. Plum is the absolute professional. Loved having to share his stories in the magazine. Yeah, PS Notes magazine is ace. Rosemary Walsh.
Too, which is great. Yeah.
WRC Rally Portugal, the Sligo gang. So it's a different Rosemary Walsh here.
Right. Yes, Rosemary kept me fed and watered in the Portugal Rally 2 years ago. And she's, of course, the clock of the course in Sligo Rally as well. And very nice lady, extremely nice. So I know 2 nice Rosemary Walshes.
There you go. You couldn't have enough Rosemary Walshes in your life. Duncan McFarlane has made it. He's got his truck parked up, the handbrake on. He was texting me earlier. He was in a bit of a panic that he wouldn't be able to watch it live, but he's managed to find a way to do it. Good man, Duncan. Dave Welford was speaking of Burnsy. Does Plum remember the Rally Masters show in 2001 when Richard came over in the Subaru? That would have been Punchestown, I think.
Punchestown, yes, I do indeed. Yeah, of course I do. Yeah.
Yeah, we all do remember that. Ronan Morgan organised that, didn't he? If I remember right.
He did. It was 2 years. 2 years it ran, I think. And there were 2 events a year. And Alston McKay was very much involved in that too. He was partnership with Ronan Morgan.
Got you. Okay. Thanks for that, KC Scale Farming. Good bit of PR there. Sheila McDonald. And Rob, no doubt, will be watching. Big Rob. Great as always. Lovely to see Plum rating as many stories. Rob and Sheila. See?
The dump valve man, I call him, because
call him what?
the dump valve man, because he was. There was a time when the Mitsubishi, the Group N Mitsubishis, or the Group N Mitsubishis, he was always finding them, throwing them out because the dump valve wasn't right.
Fair enough. That's that. He's a hard man, that Rob McDonald. He's a hard man. He's a very fair man, actually. Did Plum ever get Nesbitt's on board? Okay, that was definitely a controversial subject at the time.
Never did.
Never got it.
Talked about it many a time. It miraculously disintegrated.
Yeah,
it's amazing what a light spin will do to a camera.
Do you want to tell the story for those people who haven't a clue what we're talking about, or is that still too controversial?
Can you remember the year?
04.
04, yeah. There was a service area in Downings, in a field actually on the way into Downings. I remember waiting there with the camera crew, waiting for them to come back. And there was a delay, a big delay. I mean, was it the Port Law stage it happened?
Don't remember.
Anyway, was it Nesbitt spun? Yes, Nesbitt spun and blocked the stage. And realized he'd lost a lot of time and it'd be a very good idea to stay there. And of course, then the others arrived, and particularly Eugene Donnelly. And Eugene actually got through, I think, round the outside of him. There was a whole controversy about who had done what, and who should have been penalised, who shouldn't, and there was all going to thing. And of course, the crucial bit of evidence was the onboard camera.
A bit like Schumacher in Monaco that time, wasn't it?
Yeah,
At where Rascasse it was, yeah.
Yeah. We had Eugene's on board, which he was very glad to show, but strangely, we never got Andrews.
You want to buy more reliable tapes? That's what's wrong. You're buying cheap crap. That's what it was, Plum.
That's it.
Anthony's Plum Legends, some memories, yeah, of course. Another mini-man, Boyd's Quarry. Henry Stewart, yeah, remember Henry? There's loads of them. Lawrence Gibson and a mini, Dennis Bickerstaff, all those boys were great. George Warren was the guy from Neath.
Yes, of course.
There we go.
Yeah, good man.
Thanks for that, Gareth. Seeing him put many fond memories. Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. Great show, lads. Thanks, Philomena in Norfolk. Harry Cathcart and Mervyn Johnson, two mini-men, sadly no longer with us, Avril. Yeah, you're right.
Well, wait a minute. We've still got Mervyn Johnson.
Mervyn's still here, yeah.
Mervyn, yeah.
Harry's gone. Mervyn's still
Harry's
here.
Gone, yeah. And another little story about that part of the world. I was commentating at a rally sprint at St. Angelo, and Harry Cathcart was competing. And my son, Patrick, was about 7 at the time, and I brought him down. And he was playing with two other young boys in the just round where the car was, But every time Harry Cathcart came out, these two boys would rush up and watch, And I said, why are you watching that? He says, oh, that's our Uncle Harry. I said, oh, he said, did your daddy compete? He used to, he says. And I said, what happened to him? He says, he was assassinated. Well, my goodness, I nearly went through the ground. But I'm trying to remember their names now, but there were two brothers, and their surname was the same as an accessory company in Belfast.
Okay.
And they had all kinds of little giveaways, pens and key rings, stuff like that. So I went, and they were known as the so-and-so brothers. And so I went into them, I got all this stuff, gathered all this stuff up and sent them off to the two boys. I just never was so shocked in my life. It just
I can imagine. Yeah.
brought the troubles back to me in such a way, Yeah.
Horrible. So here's another memory for you from Mick Maughan. What a legend. Best night of crack. The Saturday night of Rally Ireland qualifier, 2006. Sat with Plum, chatting about rallying and family. What a gentleman. Great memory for Mick. That's just any night with Plum. Simon Welby, great crack as usual, man. Thanks, Simon. Great to see Plum looking so well. Thanks for that. Remy Stockman, that was him. So we found out what happened to 205 Plum.
Well, I'll tell you something. He's a good driver, but that implies that I might be a good driver. So I'm blowing my own trumpet. But he can, as the man says, he can steer.
Mutual respect, we'll call it. Barney Mitchell sits in the passenger seat of that Mark II Escort, driving very sideways. So single-handedly kept the reputation of Irish rallying at the top for years. Yet some of the figures were incredible, weren't they, with the RPM? What were you talking about?
Well, it was an extraordinary thing. On the very first show in 1991, we hit a sort of plateau. And it was about, I suppose, from UTV and RT, it would have been about 120,000, you know. And then, when you added in the satellites and stuff afterwards, that greatly raised it. But it was almost that standard every Thursday night. It was sort of the same people seemed to watch it. If a granny got sick or something, it went down one figure. Or if a cousin came from England, it went up a figure, you know. It was just quite extraordinary. Yeah.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Okay. Robin Rhodes was a great commentator. Great guy on a Thursday night in the Portobello of Dublin with the stories from the motorsport community from Eric. Who else have we got here? Kevin O'Driscoll. Memories of the late Hanu Mikla, who we lost a week ago, Plum.
Yeah, and very sad indeed. And of course, I remember him on the Circuit of Ireland. I remember the famous Coke bottle incident on Moll's Gap when the clutch was slipping in the Quattro. I remember doing actually a forum with him in the King's Arms in Larne.
Yeah.
I think it was before the Ulster Rally, but I remember him being on the panel there. A real gentleman, very sad indeed. Of course, an absolute legend, one of the greats. Yeah.
Incredible, yeah. Just the hero. You think Mark II Escorts, you think Eaton Yale, you look back and Ari Vatna and Bjorn Valdegard, they were all there. And yeah, you're right. That Audi thing was David Sutton was explaining the Coca-Cola on camera, wasn't it?
Yes.
Sutty ran it. Sutty was our team manager in 2003 as well. So it was all those types of stories I used to get him to regale me with, which was great. Sisters in the house, Market Hill, that's good to see. Should be phoning me about 12 o'clock at night to talk about it all. Looking good, Plum, with great RPM America memories. And
Charlie. Hello, Charlie. Great to see you. Great times, of course, out in America. We did, I think, four rallies in America. The first one was a complete disaster. That was in Washington, D.C., and we went out to Seattle, and they employed, Charlie and the gang employed a local cameraman called Brett Dodd. I'll never forget him as long as I live. And Brett had a quite a juicy fiance. And of course, all the boys were sniffing around this. And Brett's sole intention was trying to fend them off. And he hardly ever pressed the trigger of the camera the whole time. It was a complete disaster. When we got to the start, I was trying to get interviews done and everything else. And the first stage was literally across the road at the university grounds. And I said, Brett, look at the time. I said, we need to get into position, and so and so anyway. And the car we were following, which Charlie was co-driver, was running about number 12 or 14 or something like that, And so we positioned Brett up on this hillside, very good series of bends. You could actually see the start in the distance. So I was able to time when he was due, And so I'm having a real senior moment. Charlie's driver from the west of Ireland, we went out to follow him.
Seamus Burke, no?
No.
Okay, I can't.
Somebody will come up in a minute. Anyway,
okay, Charlie will come back at house. Yeah.
Yeah, but we were all positioned, and I said, "Now, Brett, practicing these few. Here we go. You look, get a nice low shot there, and I said, and our guy is just second off, leaving the line now. Be ready." And practicing this one. And then I said, and there goes our guy off the line. He'll be with you now in 30 seconds. 30 seconds, Brett. So Brett comes up and he's looking all around him, and our guy goes past. And Brett turns to me and says, "Is that the one you wanted?"
Yeah, no, not necessarily.
And
Cool.
we never made a film out of that. The footage was so bad we
Really?
couldn't use it. We just couldn't. And all the way to it's the only program we never delivered on. Yeah,
Lesson learned.
yeah.
So Tommy's here. Plum calls me to be late for school so many Friday mornings. Yeah, and it inspired a generation of us to go rallying as kids. There you go. And there's lots of us. I've seen this a lot. These guys in particular, they're absolutely fantastic lads from Tip. All big mates and all got into rallying on the back of what they say there. Making rallying look sexy. The music was epic. Saltwater by Chicane using Donegal, Inseparable. Again, this is what I was saying to you. These guys have got songs that remind them of particular rallies, and it just goes back to your love of music back then, and it just shows you that it did have an effect on people, and it's certainly encouraged them. So lots of love in the house for you. End of Shields, this is great stuff. Looking great, Plum, from Auckland, New Zealand. Good to see you.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Paddy Byrne, talking about passports, you know, anyone who arrived at Dublin Airport, check in to go to the Race of Champions in Grand Canary. I can sort of guess the answer to this question, but go on ahead.
Well, I'm not so sure about that particular one, but the first time I was ever asked to commentate at a Grand Prix was for RTE in Monaco. And I was packing up the night before, terribly excited about all this. Just flicked through my passport and thought, oh my God, it's out of date.
Uh-huh.
What am I going to do? I am not going to miss the chance of a lifetime. I'm hoping not arrested after confessing this, but so I looked at it closely and I noticed there was a sort of a 6 could be made into an 8 quite handily, you know.
Uh-huh.
So I did that and then presented the next day at Dublin Airport. And,
Not sure we should be saying this, but go on ahead.
terribly nonchalantly, you know, and went through, came back. And then I thought, how am I going to renew this passport? You know, it's now wrong. Yeah. So we had a little puppy dog at the time. And I opened a relative page, put a bit of raspberry jam on it and gave it to the dog. And he chewed the page. And I brought it in the passport office and explained what had happened at the pub. The puppy had attacked the passport and they renewed it, no problem.
Excellent. No better man to talk away out of it. Right, here's another handling. Bobby Willis again. This is a guy who said we'll never be able to get it into 2 hours, and he sent me ideas for stories. So the story of when Abdullah Bakashab brought you to Dubai for the rally, also look at you had an inch perfect position for filming a ditch.
Oh, that was a scary, scary one. That's the closest. Well, we had 2 really close shaves in all the years of filming. That was one. And that was David Lamrock was the cameraman. I'll come back to it in a second. The other one was Chris Tyndall, my son, at Mandela when a bike went right over him. But we were out in the middle of the desert. It was all new stuff. I mean, the speed of these cars in the desert is amazing. And we were at the second stage, and we were beginning to get used to the sort of speed of them. Bakashab and Bobby, they were in an escort Cosworth. And so we waited on because there was a second class of sort of lightweight Jeeps and Land Rovers and things. And in the distance, this bright yellow Land Rover came. And we were all set up in what looked like a very safe place. And suddenly it hit this bump, it hit this berm, and it started to roll and roll and roll and roll. And I always had a code. I was the sort of minder on this occasion. I had a code with the camera that I would tug him, you know, if I thought this was getting a bit crazy, you know. And and the problem is, of course, if you're a cameraman, you're looking through a black and white lens, you know. You don't get the same perspective. You don't get the same approach speed. So this thing started to go badly out of control. So I tugged David and ran right. And I looked around and he hadn't come. And he was frozen there. And the next thing I saw, this thing barrel roll over him, you know, and I couldn't see him. I was sure he was dead. And to my amazement, he got up out of the dust. And all he had injury was it was a gash on his knee. And it was just the most frightening thing ever. And the tripod, the yellow mark on the tripod, the camera was completely destroyed. And the tripod just was about 6 inches up from the bottom of the tripod was a yellow mark of the Land Rover.
Because the Land Rover wasn't badly damaged either, was it?
Oh, not half. There it is. Yeah, and of course that then who's it?
Abdul Bakashab.
Yeah. Again, I'm having a senior moment here.
Okay.
Andrew Marriott
Yeah.
had a program going in England, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he saw this shot and pinched it and put it in the titles. And it ran in the titles for years.
Wow, okay.
But not only that, I mean, out of the bad luck of that, a company from Hollywood in California rang me up and said, look, we're doing this 30 Seconds to Death series. Can we buy your footage? And I said, sure. We sold it to them. And then we sold it to a movie, a full-blooded movie called Salmon Fishing in the Yemen. My daughter's just reminded me. And that, yeah. And you sit
lovely to have
watching.
a PA in the house.
Yeah. You sit watching this salmon fishing in the Yemen, and there's this guy sitting bored stiff, been posted to the Yemen, and turns on the TV and he says, what the hell am I going to do in this place for 3 years? But nothing ever happens here. And then you see our shot rolling virtually out of the screen. So
right place, right time, or wrong place, right time. Who knows what way that all work out like?
Yeah.
Okay. So speed is key. Do you remember Dick Bailey? I remember Dick Bailey. He used to rally a green, yellow, and red Metro 6R4, which was later bought by Ray Breen. Sadly lost his life in a hill climb in Wexford in 2002.
Dick Bailey was a mighty driver.
Yeah,
fabulously spectacular driver.
Didn't he have a Mark II Escort, a yellow Mark II Escort with black?
Yes,
Yeah,
I think but he also had wasn't a Ralt. It was a sort of copy of a Ralt that was made in New Zealand, and he was outright champion in that. Mm-hmm. And he raced at Phoenix Park sideways everywhere. Oh, it's spectacular driver.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sad that he's gone. So Glenn Murray met Plum at the start of Mullins Gap in 2000. He was a very young child, and he arrived over and handed you a bar of chocolate. There you go. You give chocolate to kids. That's good.
Yeah. I was given chocolate one other time. I was racing a Capri at Kirkeston, and Martin Donnelly, Senior's son, Martin Donnelly, to be Grand Prix driver.
Yeah.
He and a friend were down, and they thought I'd gone quite well in this Capri. Mm-hmm. And we adjourned to, as we always did, to the Mermaid in Kirkcaldy. And in came Martin with a box of chocolates that he and his friend had clubbed together to buy me for driving well. I was one of the greatest prizes I ever got. That was it. I haven't got a good photograph because it was the only photograph I have. It was in the middle page of a book or something, So
there you go. Stories everywhere. Who have we got here? Eamon Coakley just wondered, does Plum have any opinions and coverage with the technology that is available now? So cameras are better, cheaper, drones, and just the cost of producing a program?
Well, drones, absolutely. I wish I'd had drones. They're fabulous. And Mick Bracken uses them very well. But of course, you need drones because you can't get into positions to film the way you used to. The safety regulations are so tight. I mean, we used to move cameras all around the corner to make it look more exciting. You can't do that anymore. So you very much rely on things like drones and onboard. And if you look at the World Championship coverage, there's very few outside cameras. It's all helicopter and drone and onboard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. All change. Hi, Eden. Some memories, okay. Everybody wants RPM back. Thank you so much for the mention. No problem, Doc. Great mention for RPM. So John Armstrong from Fermanagh, does Plum know how to get your hands on the Loeb Donegal in-car DVD? Was that one of the best projects you worked on? I've got a copy of it here. I can send you it, John, if you want.
I can sell you one.
Yeah, Plum will sell you one. Go on the website. It's no problem. Get that sorted. Give Plum a bit of money. He's in retirement. Yeah, we actually got them for Deja Vu.
Yes,
right.
that's
a copy of it. There we go. So do Deja Vu this year. You don't know what you'll get, John Armstrong. You should be there anyway. What's wrong with you? And it's only down the road from Fermanagh. Martin Lavery. Great show, fantastic stories. Ivan Rafferty, what's going on? They're trying to trick me here. What a great time was had. Yeah, we talked about Plum. So we've done that one. Thanks. Gordy Noble's here. Who were the best and worst drivers to interview? All right, you could open a big can. You can sit in the fence if you like, but best.
Worst.
Let's go for best. Oh, go for worst.
Go for worst, right? Well, in racing, it was the late Jay Pollock, who was the biggest talent I think we ever had in Ireland.
You've talked about that a lot over the years. What made him so good?
He was fantastic. He just had an absolute natural talent, but sadly very little ambition. He was the brother John, the younger brother John Pollock, who was a very, very good driver too.
Mm-hmm.
He sadly was killed in a boating accident in Belfast Lough. But Jay, you could put him into anything, and put him in 2 years later after he hadn't driven, and he would win.
But that's a big statement. You think of the drivers who went on to do something. So you think of the Tommy Burns, and you think of Derek Daly's, and all that lot. Like,
he was a silent man, quiet man, hated being interviewed, but just had this amazing talent. In fact, Crosley used to use him to test the new cars, and it wasn't a very good idea because he was too good. If there was a problem, he'd drive around it, rather than identify it and fix it. But I mean, I'm saying that, and I'm thinking that I saw John Watson in my lifetime, and I saw Derek Daly and all these guys, and I would put Jay Pollock as the most talented guy I ever saw here. But he was a nightmare to interview. And then you have you have people like a lovely, lovely guy, Eamon Boland, but just terminally shy, and you couldn't go up to him and interview him because he'd scurry around the back of the motorhome or disappear around into the service area. He hid from you, and he always, and I used to be able to corner. I just used to doorstep and corner him, and then I'd say you lost 3 wheels in that last stage, Eamon, and the bodywork's coming off. And he says, not a bother.
That's it. He's still doing the same. 2015 to 2017, when I was working the World Championship stage end there, and I know him, and like you did, and not a bother. It's fine.
Yeah.
No bother.
And of course, another real nice guy too, but again, terminally shy, Stephen Finlay.
Yeah, exactly.
Running a mile from a microphone, and. I think it's a matter of fact that he gave up a win in England one time because he would have had to have gone up on the podium and be interviewed. And when he had the concerted to go at the Tarmac Championship and lost in the very last round, you give me the years there, Trevor. Remember in the pilot, for Cosworth, Again, he was a bit better that year, in all honesty, because he was out to do the Tarmac Championship, and he knew he had to be interviewed. But I remember he had that terrible disappointment. He crashed in the Cork 20, and Kenny McKinstry got it. And I remember after the prize giving, when quite a few drinks were taken in the bar, he says, "There you go, Plum Tyndall. You never come and interview me." And I said, "Stephen Fiddley, I'm not hearing your words,
If I had £1 for everybody who asked me to get him on this show, good luck with that. I would have thought it'd be good going to do it. Yeah. So anybody else who are the best to interview?
Then there's the ones.
Apart from that, Gordon Noble. You told me before we came on the show. You said that Gordon Noble's some boy. I'll definitely love interviewing him.
I have a lot of time for Gordon Noble. You got the guys who won't stop. Cathal Gurley's pretty good at that.
I got Cathal Gurley down to 15 minutes. I'll have for the Galway programme.
You did well.
Yeah, we actually talked for about an hour and a quarter, but I cut it into 15 minutes. But I want to get him back on again. He can chat. It's good fun.
Eugene Donnelly's a great interviewee. And then the international ones, they're all trained. They're all very professional, And just those are the ones that sort of immediately come to mind. Mm-hmm. Andrew Nesbitt, good too.
And what we asked me earlier about the pilot car, that was probably 94. What was it? You're talking about Killarney? Around 94, I'd say, with that one. But again, remember him 2000. Finlay was some talent. I remember him winning this first rally 17 years of age, in a Sunbeam, Talbot Sunbeam. I think Norman Kittle has sat alongside him in a North Armagh Lanes event. And then, of course, at his height in 2000 on the Acropolis Rally with Rory, we were sixth after the first day. Amazing driver. Okay. Aidan Doherty, one great memory comes to mind. One of Plum's crews crashed the golf cart into the car. Like, what's going on there? I don't remember that.
We borrowed a golf cart at Lurgan Park Rally.
Yeah.
And Lurgan Park is bloody hard work because once the event starts, it doesn't stop. And you are go, cruise. And it's a big park, when you're sort of going from location to location. But we used to allow what we call an ice cream break. And my son Chris was sent off to get the ice creams. And the crews were all set up and they were ready to start filming. And they saw him coming up in the golf cart, and he was steering the golf cart with his knees, and he did the pokes, about 2 pokes in each hand, and they were filming this, you see, and he comes up and he comes round this tree, and he doesn't realise there's a marshal's car there, straight into the marshal's car. Ice creams everywhere. Oh dear, it's a great shot. We have it somewhere.
Trying to multitask too much, that was the problem.
Yeah. He had a very embarrassing time after that.
Look at this. See if I can see this. Can you see that? Yeah. This is a receipt from John Armstrong. I can't get it any bigger than that, I'm afraid. He's actually paid £13 something for the DVD. There you go. That's how quick things happen. So you're sitting here earning money, Plum Tyndall.
Oh, yippee.
Hey, how cool is that? What about working with Loeb that weekend? Because how was that?
It was incredible because Paddy was doing, my son Paddy was doing a lot of World Championship stuff at the time. And he had been to Citroën and he got a deal with them. That's how we were able to make this DVD because, you see, it was outside the World Championship, so it wasn't restricted. And so he did a deal with Citroën that if we paid for the onboard, could we make a DVD out of it and sell it?
Yep.
So we had to use the BBC onboard people because that was the only people Citroën would allow, and they were hell of expensive. I think it was about $4,000 for the weekend or something we had to pay. So we were really up against it to make out on that DVD. And then, God love them, Patrick and Chris, I think, edited it. But they were very slow, and it dragged on and on and on. And we wanted it out for Rally Ireland, because that was going to be the big sale point.
Of course.
And it didn't happen. And then there was a dispute with Citroën, because Paddy hadn't really sort of dotted the I's and crossed the T's. And the lady, I don't know if you remember, she was the press lady for Citroën. What?
Marie Pierre, yeah.
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 Very dishy looking lady, but a very difficult lady. And
Married woman now, Plum, go on.
She wouldn't release the damn thing.
All right, okay.
And eventually, we were out a lot of money on the thing. And eventually, I was asked by Citroën Ireland. We were covering the little, what was it, the CV. Remember the one class Citroëns in Ireland? We were covering them. And anyway, Citroën Ireland asked me would I like to go on a trip over to Paris to see the work set up there. So I said, yeah. So I went over, and here she was with a group of journalists. And I thought, this is my chance. So straight in the middle of it. And I said, listen, I need to talk. She said, I'm with somebody here. I said, I know you're with somebody, but I wouldn't mind them hearing this. I said, we're a tiny company in Ireland. And if you think that we would be stupid enough to take on Citroën and violate and risk a lawsuit, you had an agreement with us and you didn't honor it. And she was really embarrassed, and it worked.
Oh,
And
work. Okay.
I worked and eventually got the video out. But I'm very glad I've sold one tonight because we didn't make any money on that video.
There you go. Keep them coming, boys. Get into that store and get them bought. Earn a few quid for Plum in his retirement. One great memory of Plum was trying to interview the Russian brothers in Killarney. We talked about these guys a few weeks back. Yeah, good story. The BMW that it was.
That's right.
Yeah,
They were a sensation to come. Nobody had ever heard of them,
Nope.
And they suddenly turned up and they nearly won the rally. And they nearly won it again the next year. Yeah.
Does Plum remember borrowing a car?
Sorry,
Mutual
just
friend?
before could you just go back to working with Loeb? We went up on the Thursday when they were testing up at Muckish on a private test. And we were able to film there.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. Citroën were totally lost. They had got everything completely wrong. They couldn't believe the Irish tarmac. And of course, that Muckish stage is particularly bumpy. And they were doing a run, coming down, changing suspension, doing another run, coming down. Loeb was not a happy man. It was fascinating to watch them working, how quickly they could change everything. But you remember then when they went to the rally, the first two stages, Mark Higgins was 28 seconds ahead of them.
He was. He enjoyed that. You were asking him the question.
He loved that. Yeah, I said, Mark, do you realise you're 28 seconds ahead of as he was then the triple world champion? He said, Plum, can you ask me that again? It didn't last, of course, but
it didn't. Right, another one from Ronnie Mitchell. Does Plum remember borrowing a mutual friend's car scrapped after an event, Martin?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay.
Mark McGrath, who may be watching this in hospital at the moment.
Oh, right, okay.
Very good friend of mine.
Get well soon, Mark.
He's going to have a heart bypass operation. We wish him the very, very best of luck in that. But Martin, they were doing these what do they call them? The scrap rallies. There's a name for them. They did them around Ireland, around the continent, and everything. And they did this one to Norway. And Ronnie Mitchell was on it too. Yeah. And I think Ronnie had a big Zephyr or something like that. And Martin had a Rover. And got all the way to Norway. And the Rover was pretty well done. And he didn't fancy driving it all the way back from Norway. So he flew back with Anita. And so he left it in the scrapyard.
Yeah.
Right? Ronnie Mitchell knew his car wouldn't make it back from Norway. Went into the scrapyard, saw Martin's car there, bought it for a tenner or something, and drove it home. Now, Martin thought it had long gone. It was in bits, And Ronnie came around and told me about it. And I said, Ronnie, don't say a word. Don't tell Martin, And so I arranged for Ronnie to park it in the plough, in the car park of the plough, you see.
In Hillsborough.
And I got Martin up to the plough and I said, Martin, on behalf of our PM, I just want to say that, really appreciated the way you've helped us over the years. And I feel it's time I would give you something back, And I said, I'd like to present you with this little token. Could you come with me? You see, out the back car park. And there was his car. And he couldn't believe it. The car that he thought he'd lost in Norway,
That's just one story out of all the stories. Just amazing. It's stuff that happens like in your life. Noel Lawler, there we go. Noel Lawler was Charlie's Man, USA.
I apologize to Noel Lawler. Why could I not remember that man's name? It should be ensconced in my brain forever. What a driver. Bloody good driver.
Sean,
really?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, Sean Moriarty and Sean Keown, they're all piling in, remembering about that. And here's another one from Bernard Bradley. Don't forget to ask Plum for a sober imitation of the sound of a Formula 5000 car. Can you remember? You ever done it sober for a start?
Well, quite easy. It's a big low rumble. What do?
There you go. That's value. Don't you dare tell me you don't get value from these shows, folks. David King, that was my Rover from the Scally Rally.
Scally Rally, that was the name.
Scally Rally, yeah. Right, here's a big one. The Colin McRae Ulster episode didn't show Colin till the last 5 minutes or so. So I was like, why no Colin? As Plum says, there was also another man on the Ulster.
Well, it wasn't the Ulster, it was the Manx.
Manx, yeah.
And we kept it. We had this amazing footage of Colin. And of course, he wasn't in the Tarmac Championship, which was the main purpose of us being there. He was in the British Championship. So I had this mad idea that we would hold back all the footage of Colin. And Cockney Rebel, what was that? Come Up and See Me, Make Me Smile. You're talking about the use of music. I think it was one of the best times we ever used a piece of music. We kept it and we used the whole 3.5 minutes of Cockney Rebel and stitched all the Colin McRae shots together and Come Up and See Me, Make Me Smile, close of him through the screen. It was a lovely bit, and I've fond memories of that piece of footage.
Brilliant. Simon Welby asked who remembers that footage well. It's a big one. That was the Middle East one, I think. Ronnie Mitchell, David Kingham. Yes, your car parked up a scrapyard in Buda in the Arctic Circle. Who else we got here? Dick Bailey at a Black Mark II Escort. Remember the night Plum hit it for Martin to Plough car park, so that's bringing back a lot of memories. Near due to go back to Barbados again. I'll definitely take life insurance to do the curb camera. So I can imagine that one. Best IVS with the guy who was way up the field and crashed. He told you he was flying, came into the series, left, right, and suddenly ran out of talent. Okay, plenty of stories there. What's your memories of Bertie and Mark Fisher? Okay.
Now we're getting to it. Wonderful, wonderful memories. There's no other way of putting it. He was. I remember he was the professional amateur. I think I remember describing. He ran his rallying like he ran his business at the very highest level, and he was honest to the core. When there was all kinds of rumors about illegal rallying, Bertie was not amongst those names, and he was a fantastic talent, absolutely fantastic talent. I had a most amusing incident very, very early on when I was trying to race a little bit. I had bought a Mexico, a Mach 1 Mexico in England. It had been a rolled car that I got straightened out, and I took it to the Enniskillen and Sprint to St. Angelo and won my class. And a couple of guys came up to me after and says, "You're going well, Plum." He said, "You beat Bertie Fisher." I said, "Bertie who?" I'd never heard of him,
Yeah.
And he went that way and I went that way. But a lovely man and an honest man to that. We did a lot of business with him. We did a lot of PR for his company. Yes. And it was always 100% straight deal. And it was one of those contracts that was great because it worked well for us, worked well for them. So I had a lot of dealings with him on both business and in rallying. And of course, his achievements are, there on paper. They're brilliant.
Yeah, and Mark?
Mark was an undoubted talent. And a lovely little rascal, and he would call in late at night and he'd been all over the place. And he had the work ethic of the father too. He worked night and day. And of course, when poor Mark died, there were a number of young ladies claiming to be Mark's girlfriends, which was a bit awkward at the time. But and that day, I suppose the word is privileged. I was privileged to be asked to speak at the funeral along with Austin.
Along with Austin, yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and the two of us sat there in the church, 3 coffins in front of us. Never ever forget it. Yeah. And poor Austin was struggling. He turned to me and he said, "I don't think I can go through with this, Plum." And I said, "Austin, I may be used to public speaking, but believe me, I'm finding it every bit as difficult as you. We both have to go through with it."
Yeah.
And that's, I'll tell it again, that's when Ian Paisley walked in and took a front row seat, much to my annoyance, because I thought, that man's just looking for votes, Mm-hmm. And but it gave me the opportunity to nudge Austin. And I said, because Austin would be a Republican with a small R, you know.
Okay.
And I nudged us and said, "There you are, Austin. You never thought you'd be giving a sermon to the Reverend Ian Paisley in a Protestant church, did you?" And he laughed and he said, "Very no, stupid." And he was fine after that, you know.
Relaxed him a
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
Great. If you want to hear some fantastic stories about the Fishers, Kevin Glendenny's put together 3 fantastic podcasts on the Crunching Gears podcast. He just released the last one a few days ago. So again, if you don't know how to listen to a podcast, get somebody to help you with that. Some fantastic interviews. Everybody was instrumental in the Fishers' lives and Bertie and Mark's lives. So like a David Campion, Kieran McAnallen, Rory, the usual people that you can think of were part of that, and some fantastic interviews, including Ivan Fisher and lots of others. So,
And of course, we must never forget Emma. You know,
never forget Emma, no, and what she had ahead of her from the missionaries and everything was going. And of course, Gladys and Roy, you know, you can never imagine what they went through, and all of that. It's just incredible. Anyway, let's fire it on here, and we'll see what else we can find quickly. Simon Maynard, even in Old Plum, if there's one moment you could go back to and relive again from your incredible motor in history, geez, that's a hard question.
blimey.
This is something similar as well from Vinny. If you could pick one rally that you've covered, so
I'll actually pick, I'll try and remember a few, but I'll pick a very early incident. And again, funny enough, St. Angelo Airport. And the sprint was over, and Cathal Curley, Mach 1 escort, Robert Ward, Mach 1 escort, and Flat Pat McCourt, Mach 1 escort, went out and did demonstration laps. And long before drifting was invented.
yeah.
And it was like synchronized sideways rallying. It was amazing that night, you know.
Wow.
And it just always stuck in my memory, that.
Definitely wouldn't have picked that one.
Yeah. Internationally, I had a wonderful year in 86 because I was picked up by this Dutch company and asked to commentate at all 10 European Grand Prix. And 90, if you had to pick a year in the history of Formula One, you'd be hard-pressed to beat it, because it was the turbo era. And you'd Senna, and you'd Mansell, and you'd all the Prost, and all the Piquet, all the big names. And you had this Banzai qualifying, where they had a qualifying engine. And
this is in 86 Plum, yeah?
86, yeah. And they screwed those things up to, they got one lap out of them. They did a warm-up lap, the Banzai lap, and then they were done, you know? Yeah. And they screwed them up to something like 1,300 brake horsepower.
Yeah.
It was crazy, you know? And I remember I walked out the back of the circuit and at Imola. And Imola is not like you see in the box at all. It's very undulating, very up and down. And there's where the circuit goes up the top of the circuit, and then it dives down into what they call the Aqua Minerale. And there's a 90-degree right at the top of the hill. And Senna, he was driving for Lotus at the time. And he came around this left-hander, 90-degree left. He came around this left-hander, and he got it completely on the grass. And he didn't lift. He just planted her the whole way down the hill to Aqua Minerale and still got a good lap time, you know? It was just light out of your eyes stuff, you know? And those are the moments when a car is what I call dancing, when it's absolutely on the limit. And you know that this guy is so special, you know, and he's having a moment of his lifetime. That's what motivates me.
And the noise and everything that went with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I actually went to the Australian Grand Prix that year. That was the year Monsell had the blowout, all the sparks at the end of the Quetterville Straight. And the gold ticket cost me $180. I was backpacking in Australia at the time. That was a huge investment for me. So I was sat at the end of the straight, literally watching it when it all occurred, all happened. So I took myself off to the pub straight away. That was enough. Yeah. This is, I just traveled 9,000 miles. I bought a car at $400. Traveled 9,000 miles from Sydney up the east coast, across the top and down the middle, down through the red middle. Ended up at Adelaide. Slept in the car for the first night, sold it for $350, and headed back home. So slept in it for 7.5 weeks as well.
Yeah.
That was proper backpacking, but that was that. But that was a year as well that you weren't able to do a couple of the races, or one race anyway, because you were Donegal. You had a commitment with Donegal. Was that right?
That's
Or is that a
right.
different?
Yeah, I was asked to go to Canada and America, and I couldn't go because of in Donegal. Yeah, I didn't actually get to Australia. They'd run out of money by the time that came up.
Yeah.
But the other, just remember another moment. The other definite wonderful moment was to be commentating for RTE, as it was, at the British Grand Prix at Silverstone when John Watson won, because I'd known him from his teenage years, and I always believed in him. And to be there when he won that Grand Prix and to be commentating on it was fabulous. Yeah.
Incredible memories in that. Okay. Porrick Boylan, another great show. Trevor encountered Plum numerous times while timing at the end of stages. Thanks for doing that, Porrick. We need guys like you, particularly the final stage. Always a gentleman. He and his team always work with us getting the job done. Yeah, brilliant. Marshalling and trying to get volunteers now. Plum's a bit of an issue in motorsport in Ireland.
We had the odd dust up with a marshal or something. Very, very seldom. But I would say that 99.9% of the time we were out on the stages, we got nothing but total cooperation from the marshals.
Yeah. Good. Who we got here? Ivan Rafferty, good Plum. We've sold another DVD, Plum. Look at that. Yeah. Jerry O'Brien's going to take one. Keep them coming. Martin's still watching. Sally Raleig's the name that you're trying to find earlier. Remember Sally Raleigh? There we go. Scally Raleigh is the name.
Scally
Raleigh, all over. Scally Raleigh. So Tommy found an old tape last week of Sports Stadium on RTE, and Plum put together a preview to Galway for 97 the week before the rally. A type of coverage our sports needs today, right in amongst other sports and potential new audiences. Amazing editing, even by today's standard. Even the 96 Cork 20, where not much was happening, the team had the creativity to turn it into a sort of season review, incorporate an event. RPM never matched, never bettered.
God, I remember that 96 one. We were in trouble because, as I say, it wasn't a great event, and we were able to, at the head of it, put in sort of season so far, which brightened up the whole program. But it didn't please the organisers, I can remember at the time, because they felt that they'd lost 5 minutes of their programme or something.
I know, that would happen. Any way to get Lobes on board from Cork 2007, or is that any attempt to get it?
Don't have that, no, sorry, no.
Kilnamatra, okay. What else we got here? Asked Plum about the accident RPM caught in Ballabima, and the driver said the handling would not be mighty.
It was out. No, it was in Malls Gap.
Was it? Okay.
When you were into Malls Gap, you were isolated. You had to stay until the rally had passed through. So we always used to keep the cameras rolling in case there was a bit of an incident down the line, you know. And we were up at the famous corner, and there's a nasty little right-hander just before you go up the hill to the Avoca restaurant there, where there used to be a bad bump on it. And we were going 110, 111, 12, nearly falling asleep, you know. And eventually this old Nissan comes up, 120Y or something, one of those things, you know. And it hadn't a suspension in the world, you know. And it hit this bump. And there wasn't a shock to stop anything. And it just turned sharp right and into the rock, you know. So I said to the boys, come on, run down and get this. And the guy got out of the car, and his life was over. His life savings had gone. He was a local man from Killarney. And he was looking at this, and he was distraught. And he looked up the road, and he saw the camera crew coming. And he got the comb out of his back pocket, and he slicked back his hair. And as we got there, he says, hello. I said, what happened to you there? He says, the handling in the back wasn't massive.
Oh, God, I could tell stories all night. Any stories about Billy Coleman from Robert Lawson?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Billy, you needed to be, if you had to earn your trust with Billy, you know, if you earned your trust, and I think I did over the years, he was great.
Incredibly
otherwise,
switched on, Plum. Yeah, very,
a
very.
very intelligent man. But again, a shy man,
Yeah,
and wouldn't have been a great friend of the press. Really, he wasn't that interested. He was a great friend of Michael O'Carroll, my great buddy, who did so much for my career. And so Michael was always number one in the press corps for him. But I remember a funny little thing: the Metro 6R4 that he won in Donegal. He in characteristic Billy's style, it took a couple of days to get used to it. But we went down to the Fannet stage, and there's a little back road in. There was a place, not a particularly great place, but there's very little access onto Fannet. And he came through on that. This was must have been on the Saturday evening, I think, and he had really got used to the Metro at that stage. And he was driving beautifully. It was absolutely on the limit. And I remember talking earlier about seeing a car dancing.
yeah,
But I really feel that's the magic, you know.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
when we used the shot in the program, I said, and here comes Billy now fully at home with his machine. Just watch him dancing up the road. And I remember afterwards he picked me up. Years later, he picked me up and he says, Plum, he said, I loved your comment about dancing. He said, that's the way a car should be driven. You know, and so you've got to be very careful what you say, you know, because you can offend people very easily, but you've also got to tell the truth if you can. We didn't always get it right, far from it. But yeah, Billy, and I've done a lot of forums and things with him, and he's great now, you know.
Yeah, I've seen him on telly a few times. The Late Late Show, him and Ronan Morgan did it with. Well, I can't remember what year it was, but he was very comfortable looking there. I remember the late John Campion got him over to the States with Craig Breen and Paul Nagel, and he looked very comfortable there as well. So, yeah.
We did a little DVD with him and Ronan in the Killarney Deja Vu. And we put, there's two cameras in the car. He borrowed a Porsche 911, the Rothmans one, of the late John Mulholland, very sadly, who died since.
Yeah.
And he didn't know the cameras in the car. To be quite honest, I didn't know they were in either. It was John Mulholland had put them in. And afterwards, when we got the footage, it was so interesting that we made a little DVD out of it. Now, the sound wasn't perfect on it, so we had to run subtitles underneath. But he was talking away about the old days and seeing people in the hedgerows, and there's Tommy so-and-so. I remember the time when we did this and do that, you know. And it's an entertaining little deal. It's not a cracker, but it's an entertaining little, yeah.
Mad. What a show. Could listen all night. Oh, Drew Wiley's here. Hi, Drew. How are you? Hope all is well. As a measure, the man who now focuses on raising funds for deserving charities with BT. Perhaps you could ask him what motivated the retro events. And Drew's no stranger to raising money for charity.
Well, I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Exactly. What he's done over the years has been fantastic as well. Well done, Drew. Yeah, so just thinking behind it.
I've got to bring in my partner big time here, Beatty Crawford, because when Beatty retired after 30 years in the States, he came back to live in Hillsborough. And if you know Beatty at all, the one thing he can't do is sit still. And it was his idea to run the Paddy Hopkirk Gala and to commemorate the 50 years of winning the Monty. So I was on that committee along with Cal Curley and Con Williamson and the integrated education guy. And so that was such a success that really Beatty and I sort of got motivated to continue on something fairly similar. And I actually came up with the Deja Vu title, and he came up, together we came up with the format, and we started with the Circuit of Ireland, and we've worked on 5, this will be the 6th one, I think now. So that's where the Deja Vu thing came about, really, that there was a sort of gap in the market there where people had retired, their cars didn't have any way of showing off their cars, and it was a sociable weekend. It seemed to be the only time you ever met these people were at funerals, and that wasn't a good idea.
No, No, definitely not. Just talking about Beatty there, and it's just when we talk about TV, and we're talking about footage. Beatty and Cathal Curley and Donegal and that clip, poor
Oh,
Beatty's car. But like, I don't have the face to ask Beatty or Cathal, but maybe you could talk about it.
oh, it was incredible. Um,
So you better
it-
describe it first.
yeah.
So those people who
Well,
haven't seen it, I'm not going to get it up here because that'll be just too
no,
cruel.
Beatty had in his when he was still working in the States, he first of all bought a Mini and he did Pirelli Classic and won it with Ronnie McCartney and other events. And his plan was to try and sit in the passenger seat in his own car with some of the greatest drivers in the world. And he chopped up a fabulous list of people, you know.
Yeah.
And that has greatly helped us since getting stars to come to our Deja Vu events. But for Donegal, he decided he would use Cathal. And Cathal went off and got a bit of backing from the NIIB. And off they set. But Cathal, in his head, hadn't slowed down one iota from the last time that he sat in the car. And he wasn't too good at listening to pace notes.
No.
And Beatty, I think, very early on decided maybe this wasn't a great idea. And it was the 25th anniversary, I think, of the Donegal Rally, because it was a big dinner, I remember, that night that we were all at. And Cal sat at one table and Beatty sat at the other. And there wasn't a lot of conversation between them. And I think he was dreading the third day. And of course, how he went the third day, really onboard camera on it. I mean, Cal didn't listen to one word that Beatty was telling him. You know, he was just flat out everywhere. You know, I remember filming coming out of at the back end of Knockalla there, where what we call the fresh air bend, and my God, was he on the limit? You know, and of course, where did he? It was in what, in Malin Head, I think, that he crashed. Yeah,
I was
and
definitely in a show and
yeah.
turned on.
And you know, that was an accident waiting to happen all weekend. You know.
Oh, yeah, you couldn't have took too many.
But they're good friends now. They're good friends now.
Okay. Right, okay. I've got one other thing I need to share with you here, which is a message I got, which is on the phone. So, Trevor, looking forward to you and Plum. As you probably know, his father was Bishop Tyndall, and he actually confirmed me in Castledurg Parish Church. Plum, despite being about 14 years old, drove his father everywhere. And that particular day, he spun the Morris Oxford into the front of the rectory and held up the church service. Absolutely true, and he will know who told you that.
John Lyons.
Jesse Lyons, indeed, yeah.
I used to, when I was 13, we were still living in Sligo, and we had an Austin A35. And I pestered my father. I said, look, when I become a teenager, you got to teach me to drive. So the first driving lesson I ever got was at Rosnala. And father had no interest in cars whatsoever, but he cleverly enough, the first thing he taught me to do was an emergency stop, you know. Uh-huh. So after that, I made my own arrangements. But once I learned that, but when we moved to Cavan, then we moved Cavan for a short period. We got this big Morris Oxford, and then eventually to Derry. But
it was your mum who was a big car fan, wasn't it?
Oh, she was huge. Yeah, she was. She loved cars, and she used to drive. One of the first drivers at County Longford, in an old bullnose Morris. But I used to. Father hated it so much that if he had a preaching engagement at night, he would in the winter he would let me drive him there, and I used to drive maybe 30, 40, 50 miles, you know, across counties Cavan and Longford and Leitrim and all, you know, and then when I came to Derry, the thing, but I used to delay him departing, you see, so that I could go a bit quicker.
Good skills.
Yeah. So that was a result of that John's talking about, a visit from Derry to Castledurg.
Do you remember what went wrong that day then?
Where
the talent ran out, or anything?
Well, the talent ran out frequently. the talent was never there. But yeah.
Oh, there was talent later on, though. We started to look at these bad boys.
Well, that was fun. Yeah,
that's your first competition car, was it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a road. Went to work on it Monday, like all my cars.
Uh-huh.
And the only thing modified in that were the stickers. and if you look closely, the roll cage is ridiculous. There's a piece of piping, you know. I bought that off from McCartney, that Cooper S. Yeah.
Off who? Harold McCartney?
No, lesser known one.
All right.
Yeah, but a bit of relation.
Uh-huh. Okay. That was the first one then. So success with that was?
Yeah, well, we would have actually won the championship in that first year, but it was run on a class basis. So you had to have a certain amount of entries in your class to get the points. And I was leading the damn thing it was 4 rounds or 5 rounds in Bishop's Court. And in the last round, a guy didn't turn up in my class. And I won the class, did all I could, but I didn't get enough points, you know. And would you believe, at Deja Vu, Donegal, they went down on the Thursday night just to get things organized. It was in Jackson's Hotel. And this guy in the corner and his wife says, "Hello, Plum." I said, "Hello," and I sort of didn't recognize the guy, you know. I said,
You must get a lot of that, yeah?
yeah, I was politely talking to him. He says, "You don't know who I am, do you?" And I said, "No, I'm afraid I don't." He says, "I'm the fella that ruined your championship." He says, "I was a farmer and I had to bring in the hay that day."
Really?
Yeah. So,
But you stepped it up then the following year. This is some
well,
bus that you bought then.
I really wanted to have one of these Mexicals, but I couldn't afford them. The going price of a second-hand was about £1,300.
Where do you get the money to do that then back then? That's incredible.
Well, I sold the Mini, and I went to Modelo, and there was a round of the championship of the British from the Mexico Championship.
Yep.
And there was a girl called Mickey Vanderville driving, and she was a niece of the famous Colin Vanderville, Van all the fame. And she was driving the car, and she rolled it in the second corner. Now, it was a common thing with those cars because they ran that championship on slick tires, which was wrong, really, because they didn't have enough power to slide around. They just dug in and rolled over, you know. But I saw it being rolled, went back, and bloody week later picked up Motorsport, and here was this advert for this car that had been rolled at Modelo, but it said beaten out, driving perfectly. And I rang up the guy, and it was a guy called Mike Chittenden, who was quite a well-known club driver in England. He'd fixed it. And I said, is it genuine? Is it running right? He says, "Yeah, it's running right." I said, "Would you take $850 for it?" And he says, "Yeah, I'll take $850. So we went to see the bank manager, and I said, "Look, would you lend me $850 until Tuesday?" This was a Thursday. "Would you lend me till Tuesday? I'll have sold the Mini by then, and I'll give it back to you." So I got on the plane, got down to, it was near Brands Hatch, drove the car up and down the M20 or the A20, and drove it home. And it was, you know, there was gaps in the doors, and it was also, but it was driving great, you know. And I had a friend who had a body repair business in Donegal, and he fixed it for me and did it up to look like it is there. And we won the championship with it. It was a great little car.
Do I remember you driving a 00 car in the Circuit of Ireland, a yellow Mark II RS2000, the Droop Snoot one?
Yeah, that's right.
Is that right? Okay.
It was a program we made with the BBC called Ahead of the Winners. And it was with Robert Taylor of R.E. Hamilton's arranged the whole thing. Right. And it was a Lent car from the Ford press fleet. And it was a fabulous. We were only just out the RS2000.
Yeah. That would have been 1980, something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
That was the nearest thing I ever came to rallying, you know, doing the whole circuit and that thing. And it was just beautiful. And I was reasonably sharp at the time. I'd been racing, you know. And Ronnie McCartney was entered in a Mark II. Sorry about that. Somebody's come through. Oh, it's not sorry at all. Somebody's bought something on PayPal.
There you go. Brilliant. The sales are piling in.
Yeah. So Ronnie had the full, you know, blueprinted job and slick tires and everything. And I decided Robert Taylor had no idea about paceless or anything. He didn't do them. He used one word the whole way around Ireland, and it was easy. And I began to learn this quite easily. because he would go easy, 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 heaven, easy, you know. And so we got the last stage we were doing. I thought I'll have a real go at this. It was 12 miles, and we're up a bank, and we're all over the place. And anyway, it came to the end with the time, and we were a second a mile slower than Ronnie McCartney, and I thought that wasn't bad going.
That's going well. That's great. Right, Capri then.
Yeah, that was the next step. I traded in the Mexico for this with Arnie Hamilton. This is the car, the next works car done the Tour of Britain.
Is this you, Nick and Adrian Boyd sponsors and
that's
Arnie
right.
Hamilton?
Yeah.
Well,
it was promised. Arnie Hamilton promised me that they had a sponsor,
right.
and that was on that deal I bought the car. But of course, never got the sponsor, and I couldn't afford to run the bloody thing. So I won a couple of races with. But I used to go to the cupboard. Jack Kirk was one of the mechanics in Arnie Hamilton's, and he had a cupboard of Adrian's reject parts, you know. And we used to go on a Friday afternoon, and we'd get 2 rear shocks out, and we'd sort of test them like this and see if they were matched reasonably easily. And we put them on the back, and Jack would say that you'll get 3 laps out of that, you know. And true to his word, you got 3 great laps. So you had to go like hell for 3 laps and build a lead before it started wobbling all over the place, and everybody, people like Joey Green and BMWs and stuff were catching you.
This is the last race car then.
That was the Vauxhall, yeah. That again.
It's got to be Phoenix Park then, yeah?
Yeah. But we won the championship, the All-Ireland Championship, and then I got a sponsorship from Peter Tootin, who's a company called Unsala Homes, and a bit of help from Vauxhall. They gave me an engine, and we got a bit of help from Castrol. So, and that, again, it nearly paid me to race that car, because that was my only car. Went to work in it on Monday, you know. Drove it all the way to meetings and that sort of thing. But I was pulling the tiger by the tail. I couldn't really keep it up. I had to. I'd won 2 championships and I'd had 4 or 5 years racing, and I loved every minute of it. But I hadn't a hate me to my name, you know. So it had to stop.
It's not unusual in motorsport, right? I want to go back to rallying again. I want to go back to Donegal, and I want to go back to the Ballyrain Bugle.
Yes.
So absolutely brilliant. So the precursor of the rally bulletin. Just talk us through the origin and the early days.
It was just the churned out rally bulletins. When Malcolm Neal, I was a schoolmate of Malcolm Neal's. I was in the next bed to him in the dormitory. Yeah. And when he took on the circuit to revive the circuit, 73, I think it was. Mm-hmm. So he drafted me in as press officer, and there was a journalist in the Irish News called Jack Nile. He was quite elderly, and they very unkindly christened him Jack Senile. But he had come up originally. I think he was the originator of the idea of rally bulletins, because on rallies nobody had a clue what was going on. You know? And I think, I don't know if he ever actually practiced it, but he had the idea. And anyway, Malcolm got wind of this, and he said, "Why don't you try it on the circuit?" So I got together a team, and the idea was we would have, you know, guys running around all over the place and gathering information, phoning them back, which was very difficult because, you know, there were payphones and stuff like that. And so we made a bit of a splash of this. And the first couple of rally bulletins were at the start, and that was easy, you know. So the press got handed out. So they thought this was quite good. And the next one was to be in Mullingar and the supper halt. And of course, none of the information had come through, and hey, they were all getting a bit angry at this stage. You know, there was nothing. So we started just making up stuff, you know. And eventually, a friend of mine, Barry Ditty, he'd been away out in the West, and he came through with the goods. So we cobbled together a bullet, and that got us through to Killarney. And then we just spent the weekend sort of making stuff up, and they were really vague, you know. But anyway, it was a start. And then Austin Fraser, when he took on the Donegal rally, he wanted to develop this. So first year again in Letterkenny, I did them, but they gave me a girl out of the local tech college who had no idea. Of course, I'm total dyslexic, so I need a speller, and I need somebody who knows something about rallying. And she had neither, you know. So they were a bit of a shambles really that first year. And then we brought in Lizzie Patterson, and then it took off.
Right.
And,
Okay. So what's interesting here, if you look at the top of the price, is 25 pence. So Ballyrane Bugle, named after the Ballyrane Hotel, which became the Mount Errigal, and you were charging 25 pence for an official newspapers. So it's a lot different to what it became then at this point.
Yeah, well, that was Billy Campbell had the idea. He got the print machine, this old lorry, and put a Heidelberg print in the back. And
so this is Tudor Publications.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then we started the Ballyrane Bugle, which was revolutionary in its day. But it took 6 hours from when you started one bullet to the next one, you know. So you had to be. The trick was the titles. But can you put that one back up again? No?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, there was a classic. You see, you couldn't say anything positive in the titles. You had to say, today's the day the push begins, you know, or anything, you know, big titles like anything can happen, you know.
Yeah. So you're just blagging there as well. Like
Yeah,
it's a complete blag.
Yeah.
The third edition then, so what does that mean? Is that the third year or the third day?
No, that was the third of that year.
Third that day, right.
We
Okay.
did 6 editions, I think.
What year would this have been then? Because I went to Donegal the first time, must have been 77. No, 70, earlier than that, 75. 75 it might have been.
About 75, so about 76, I would imagine that.
Right, okay.
I'm not quite sure. Yeah, about that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Jim Porter was there. He was there with Roger Clark, and he saw this, and he invited us over to do the one with the RAC rally. And that became the Lombard leader. And
have you still got that copy? Is that a screenshot of one you've got, or?
Yeah, I have them somewhere.
Have you?
Yeah. And the Lombard leader, they agreed to have us there, but they didn't want to be officially part of it. They were testing us to see, it was typically RAC. They were kind of reluctant to commit themselves to these gang of Irish gypsies, you know. And,
of course.
So we did it, and we got through it. But I mean,
the logistics must have been huge there compared to.
I could do a separate pod on that completely.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a story in itself. Yeah.
Give us a flavour.
Oh well, we went. It started in Wembley, and the big cash cow was meant to be Sutton Park. We thought that's where we'll sell enough to pay our expenses for the week, and then anything else is profit. People will get paid. But when we got to Sutton Park, by this time, Brian Patterson had come on board. And because he'd been pretty jealous of Liz being on these gigs, and I think he was a bit suspicious of me, but he had no reason to be. And so he came on board and was in charge of distribution. Billy Campbell had hired all these Boy Scouts all up the country. So Brian would meet them with a bundle of magazines, send them around, and they were going to sell them in Sutton Park, and that was going to be the big thing. But when they got there, Brian and his Boy Scouts, the British Leyland had a gang of dolly birds, and they were giving away a full colour sheet for free. So it was a disaster. You know, I think we sold maybe 120 copies or something. It was just a disaster. And we all got up to York, and we had no money, and there was no future in the thing.
And no motivation.
And so from then on, what we did, I had a guy with me. So what we did, we filled up the boot of the car with copies, and we went to a stage, and we sold them at the stage to get enough petrol to go and speak to somebody in the service, to write a story, to phone it back to York, to get it printed, to go back to York, to get another boot full of them, and go out on the stage and sell them. And that's how we survived the week.
Not the most profitable venture then.
No.
Okay. So where does the Plum come from? Just remind everybody again where Plum came from.
The most asked question.
Yeah, of course.
It comes from an amazing character who's sadly no longer with us, called Denny Kelly, who was, there he is on the right, Denny, with his Belgian girlfriend at the time. Denny and I were almost at preschool together. And at some stage, he christened me Plum. I don't know why. He doesn't know why. Maybe plum shaped, maybe plum colored, but it was a schoolboy name, and it stuck. And but the really interesting is Denny. If you show up the next slide, because he was the most extraordinary character. He built that shack in Mullaghmore, County Sligo, and it has a windmill, as you can see.
Yeah.
It has a solar panel, and it cost him nothing. That's 40, 45 years ago, you know. He had a boat in the harbour, and in the summer he fished on the boat, and then he flew to Fort Lauderdale in the winter and had an old boat there and cruised around the Bahamas and all around the Caribbean islands, selling stuff, trading stuff, and then came back. And he was a total, when you know, he's one of these people that when the bomb drops, I'll be okay type of thing. And he was self-sufficient, grew his own vegetables, everything else. And he invented a thing called a clam digging machine, which he trawled Sligo Bay with, and it gathered clams. And he and his brother built quite a good business out of that, you know. But everything he had, he made. The light fitting he'd make, you know. He made out of big Meccano. He made gearboxes, record players, you know. I collected dinky toys. He collected Meccano. But he was an extraordinary character.
When's the last you heard of him?
Well, I went to his funeral about 3 years ago.
Right. Okay.
I like to stay in touch with his sister and down in Sligo. He eventually married very late in life a German lady who was walking past the bottom of outside his cottage, and he brought her in a cup of tea with her. She spoke very little English and very little anyway, and she was a like-minded sort of Mother Earth type person.
Yeah, yeah.
And Denny used to say, she's a wretched soul, but she's very good in the garden.
She feeds me well. She provides me with stuff. Okay. Where do you want to go? Because there's so many different angles we can go and so many different places. So what in particular do you want to talk about? Bearing in mind we're 2 hours, 11 minutes into this.
Oh, right. We're running out of time. What have we not touched on?
Well, we haven't really talked about the Senna days, which I think is quite interesting.
Yeah.
So interviewing Senna.
Well, I met Senna 3 times, I think it was. Yeah. Once at Mondello when he was in the Leinster Trophy meeting, and he won it in a Formula Ford 2000. And he didn't really want to be there. He was just an apprenticeship, you know. But he was amazing. He passed Joey Greenan around the outside of the bomb hole, they called it. Joey maintains, and he could have a point that he missed a gear, but he won. The car bounced over. It was a very uneven track at the time, and he was in a class of his own. And then the next time I met him was at Monaco, when he just got his first pole position. He was driving for Lotus, and I interviewed him there with Michael O'Carroll was with us for RTE. And again, we were Irish television. We were pretty well low down the pecking order, you know. So he wasn't that interested in that. But the third time I met him was I was working for Eurosport at Spa, and the race was over, and we'd arranged an interview, and we were on top of the Marlborough bus with Murray Walker, and Murray and I were chatting away. We had to wait an hour and a half for him to appear because he was doing his deal with Ron, McLaren.
Yeah.
And it turned out it was the most lucrative deal ever done at the time.
Huge.
You know, so he came bounding up the stairs then, full of the joys. And Murray, being the gentleman he is, said, "Plum, you go first." I said, "Murray, don't be ridiculous. You know, you're the top man here." So he interviewed, and then I interviewed him, and he was very easy to interview at that time. But it's nice to say if you've met him and interviewed him. You know,
quite an incredible driver, of course.
Totally, yeah.
Absolutely selfish, right? We definitely need to talk about this man you just mentioned and the influence he had, and how, you know, with his help, everything took off, really, didn't it?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you've got a lot of people who've been very nice to me on feedback there on tonight, but this is the key man in really making major rallying work in terms of broadcasting in Ireland. Um, I I know Michael, but he
So it's
took
Michael
what.
O'Carroll we're talking about
Yeah,
here.
sorry, Michael O'Callaghan was sports producer in RTE, one of the pioneers of RTE. Really, was in and right on the ground floor. Um, and I'd moved to Dublin, was working in Dublin in a PR company, and he knew that I'd commentated. And the first choice would have been Robin Rhodes, but Robin Rhodes was somebody you couldn't trust in air. He would say outlandish things that you couldn't broadcast, you know. So RTE weren't really prepared to take the chance on that. So probably that's why I got a chance. So he, as he says himself, he took a chance on this Protestant, put me in the commentary tower, you know. And that started an ongoing joke between the two of us that still goes on to this day. And so we did live Phoenix Park 2 days. David Kennedy helped, Brian Chute helped, and that was a big success. And from that, RTE, Michael persuaded RTE to start going to Grand Prix. And the first one was Monaco. That would have been about 82, I think. Yeah. And we queued up in the sun for accreditation. And we got to the head of the queue. Michael said, "My name is Michael O'Carroll. I'm from RTE. I'm a Catholic. And this is my friend Alan Tyndall from the north of Ireland. He's a Protestant."
Yeah.
And I thought,
And
what the
and we talked to each other.
yeah, what's this going on? What's all this about, you know? So I got my own back at the start. We were all waiting. You're very nervous. First Grand Prix commentator, you know, the headphones on, and the girl comes through from Europe TV and says, "Monsieur O'Carroll, a piece for level, s'il vous plaît." I said, "Well, here we are in the playground of the Western world." "Very good, Monsieur O'Carroll. Mr. Tyndall." I said, "I'm very disappointed because the first Protestant, John Watson's, only on the sixth row of the grid." Mike says, "Can't say that." I said, "1-0." And we were friends ever since.
Excellent.
But he pioneered the 5-day coverage on the Circuit of Ireland with Rothmans and all that. And that absolutely blew it open. I mean, that just transformed it. It became a sport that everybody watched. It became a household thing, you know. That was incredible. And the organization required that. It was a joint RTE UTV, 2 producers, 2 everything, helicopters, careers, everything, you know. And that just blew it open. It's amazing.
You mentioned there the Rothmans money, because that certainly came in, and you guys who had certainly plenty of budget with the Rothmans at that time. I remember the Isle of Man and all the shows and everything that was on there. Ian
Parry.
ProDrive, Ian Parry and ProDrive, of course,
And William William Morrison.
Bill Morrison, yeah, from
They were
South,
two.
yeah.
Yeah, they were the 2 star guys. They were young guys, great ideas, great ambition, great push, and they on one side and Michael O'Carroll and UTV on the other side really made such a success of it, you know.
What challenges did you have then with the tobacco side of things, with Rothmans in particular? We also remember seeing it with Subaru and the yellow bananas instead of 555, and famously the Jordan team with the hissing Hornets or buzzing Hornets or whatever it was. So how did that affect things for you?
Well, of course, the war started with between Gallagher's and Rothmans, because Gallagher's had been traditionally the Circuit of Ireland sponsors.
Yeah.
And then Rothmans brought a car, and Gallagher's couldn't stand this, and they pulled out the next year. And then Rothmans came in themselves. Eventually, there was a year, I think, gap before Rothmans came in. They, from a commentary point of view, you had to be. You didn't really mention Rothmans too much. It was so obvious.
Yeah.
On the car, there were certain rules like that. Then, of course, eventually it got banned altogether. But of course, there were all the notorious ways around it, the hissing Hornets, as you say, and the famous one. Do you remember McLaren were sponsored by West cigarettes?
Oh, it became East, didn't it?
Yeah, when they went to Hungary. Yeah, I was there, 86.
Yeah. Again, it was an identification thing, but clearly from your point of view, you had to make sure none of it was shown.
Yes.
Dash cameras and all that type of thing. Sorry,
Oh, we
in-car
had a lot
cameras.
of rules in car cameras. We had very tight rules on that. Could only be a certain size. Couldn't be tobacco. Couldn't be booze. You know, and they were very sticky on that. Yeah, which is hard to explain to guys. You know, because once somebody is paying for you to be there to give coverage to their event, they're not interested in the rules. They're not conscious of the rules. You had to make them aware of the rules, and you had to explain, and you had to very often say, look, I simply can't do that. I won't be here next week if I do that, you know. And a lot of people didn't understand it. And the problem was that, you know, if you introduced a guy into television sponsorship or event sponsorship or championship sponsorship, you know, you did something from the first year, they were all delighted. They always expected something more the second year and something more the second. And eventually you get to a saturation point where you physically can't do any more. You're not allowed to by the rules, you know. And that's usually when sponsorships drop off.
Yeah, of course. And it's just trying to convince or trying to explain to people as well that they can't have the logo on for, you know, we used to see it being pixelated out, and that's a challenge as well for you. But of course, as we know, if you got a camera on the inside of the car, it guarantees you shots of the outside of the car to an extent as well, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't even talked that much about Lurgan Park and the involvement there and how special an event that was for you guys as well.
It was
You said
terrific,
challenging, but...
Yeah, it's hard, as I said, very hard work. But you got great pictures in Lurgan Park. It was a really photogenic place. You had the loose and you had the tarmac, and it was a pretty place, you know, and the cars looked good, and they flashed past trees, and there was always a bloody good accident or two, and, you know, and then you had the central service when you got time to get into it, to interview people. It was all very compact and always made a good program, yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about Deja Vu then, because we briefly touched on it. So the very first one was the Circuit Deja Vu in 2016. Again, the brainchild we talked about. So for those people who don't know much about Deja Vu, then just give us a little bit more of a flavour of it.
It's a very simple format. It's a big reunion, really. It's a big rally reunion or motoring reunion. As we say, it's wide open. If you've got four wheels and you're proud of them, bring them along, you know. And so we don't set any rules that way. It's first come, first serve. We add a few superstars into the mix to make it all the more exciting for people to meet them and to mingle with them. And it is just taken off, and people are using it to bring out their cars. They're fabulous cars. People are purposely rebuilding cars to run on it. And you know, the route itself, we try to make it with a bit of history of old stages involved, and also very scenic route, very scenic weekend. And people are going over these roads that they used to go at high speed or in the middle of the night and never saw what they were missing. Mm-hmm. And then a bit of an informal lunch halt where they can all chat and meet. And then, of course, the big social evening, the gala evening, where we interview the top drivers with videos of the of the famous events in the past related to that. If it's Galway, it'll be Galway this year. It was Donegal last year, and then we put in a bit of all-round entertainment for the ladies, a bit of dancing, a bit of maybe Irish dancing, maybe comedian, maybe a novelty act, and an auction which makes lots of money for the charity, which is, and that's it. And they all go home on a Sunday and enjoy themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, a fabulous weekend. To see the cars alone is just absolutely brilliant, you know. And just for as a charity event, it doesn't get much better if you're interested in motorsport and going to one of those. I just feel a couple of them I wasn't able to go to because of work, but it was great to get to my first one, Donegal, and I'll definitely be back this year whenever it happens in the west of Ireland, in Westport, and And I recommend anybody just to grab a car. It doesn't need to be a fancy car in any way. It's not about that, but you'd be part of an event where Motorsport, again, doing something really good for the local community and further afield as well.
Yeah, we will have done 6. We've done 2 in Killarney. The reason we went back to Killarney because the circuit was cancelled in the second year. So there was a big void there. And we gave it the Rothmans team. We recreated the Rothmans team for that one. And then we did a one-off one, which was great, actually really enjoyable, the Targa Florio in Sicily.
Yes,
and
okay.
It was a very different type of thing. It was, people came along and they rented a Fiat 500. And all the famous drivers who'd taken part in the Targa Florio, you got a nameplate on your car. And so you could have been Nino Vaccarelli, or you could have been Phil Hill, or Sterling Moss, or whoever, And then we drove the route as much as you can. It's pretty rocked up at places. There are lovely museums in the way, and it was a 2-center holiday in Sicily, really, a week's holiday. We got nice places, and because we're slightly off season, we got them a very good price, and everybody thoroughly enjoyed that. Yeah, it was only about 30 crews in that. And we were blessed that we got the legend himself. Paddy Hopcock came out because he'd competed in it. And we got the legend, who's this guy, Nino Vaccarelli, who's an 83-year-old school teacher who won the thing 3 times, won Le Mans, won Sebring, drove for Ferrari, Alfa Romeo, everybody, really brilliant man, hero of mine.
Excellent. Okay, good man. Well, you have a think about anything you want to finish off. We'll go back to these comments and see. So
have they all gone to bed?
No, they're all here. There's loads, over 200 people watching still. So what have we got here? So Barry Diddy, big day on Tuesday, Plum. What about the time you were with John watching at Monaco when the great man, long retired, made a pit walk?
Yeah. I commentated with Watson on a number of occasions, and he was a great ticket, to be quite honest, to get into places, and we've remained friends ever since. And people forget that he won 5 Grand Prix. He's the most winning Irish driver of Grand Prix of all, more so than Irwin and Irvine, So it's good to keep up that friendship. And that Barry Ditty is an old school friend of mine.
Is he?
Yeah, and I was his best man, and vice versa. And so nice to see him.
Very good. See, they're all coming to see you, Plum. It was Donny Murihill on the Walls Gap and the Datsun. There you go. A couple of people.
There you are. Yeah.
I told you people would get back to you. Very strong, and Tommy, of course, is no stranger to stats and finding facts and figures. Yeah. Sean Moriarty, there we go, same man, driving the Datsun Violet in Malls Gap, a local living legend. He's on Radio Kerry sometime back describing the deer rutting season in Killarney National Park, possibly more entertaining than Plum's interview with him off the road, if that's even possible. There he goes. He sounds like a legend. James Dolan wants you back regularly, Plum. I definitely think there's a good opportunity here for me to sit back and produce this, and you to get a couple of guests on. You talked about John Watson. We just need about another 25 Friday nights in the month. And of course, when lockdown finishes and everybody's mad to get down the pub, all of this might disappear. What do you think, folks? This is your chance to respond now. When we get back and we get to the end of the road and we see that light at the end of the tunnel, and on a Friday night, people have got better things to do and sit here for a couple of hours, listen to us rambling on. We probably need to ditch the whole thing. So Billy Coleman's a legend, though. What Plum was never say, he was a man to drive, keep driving. Yeah, he never give up. Declan Quigley's loving it. John Dalton's Darian was a car that danced, according to Ryan.
Yes, yeah, indeed. And we didn't. There's another legend, Frank Maher. He was
somebody did ask in fairness earlier about Frank Maher, but I just can't get to everybody yet. Go on, just talk about Frank. He was incredible, wasn't he?
Oh, incredible! And always the underdog. And of course, Ireland loves the underdog. But he I mean, his drives in Galway, particularly in those Mark II Escorts. Remember when he was leading Mark Lovell, and and then when he was leading Syed El Hajri in Cork,
Yeah.
and Gary Gillespie's famous interview with him. He said, your car, his car had blown up, and it was Saturday night. And Gary interviewed him, and he said, if you had a works car, he said, what would you do? He said, I'd just come out and take her handy and win. It's so missed, and great support of RPM. Came all the way up. We haven't talked about Stormont. He came all the way up from Tipperary with his car to take part in Stormont for us, and as did so many people for that event.
Let's talk about that, because it's the highlight of your career. Clearly.
Yeah, I mean, I was very lucky to survive cancer, and I wanted to do something special in return. And I'd been to a Goodwood, and I'd thought just how wonderful that was. And Don Wilmot, another great friend of mine, he worked in the tourist business, and he said, Plum, all this Millennium money is coming up, maybe we should to do something on that. And I said, well, let's do something together, Don. So we put together a report, and then I think I began to scare the living pants off Don, because I began to go bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, And so he helped in the early stages, and then he took a sidestep. But he was there and helped on the day and everything. He's always been a great supporter. But I got the idea of, where would we hold it? And of course, Stormont had to be the place, And that, of course, had all kinds of difficulties, because we were in 2000, not long after the Troubles and everything. But with Millennium, I wanted to try and get every branch of Irish motorsport represented on that hill that day, to celebrate the heroes past and present of Millennium in Irish motoring. And the lineup we had was amazing. We first of all, we had a subcommittee doing the bikes, and we gave them a sum of money, not a huge sum of money, I have to say. And they came up with a list that was just amazing. Agostini and 3 or 4 world champions, and and it was just, they brought such a list of people there, absolute legends. And then we got our rally list, local and foreign. We got Paddy Hopkirk, obviously, we had to have. That was a big international name. We had Brooks, with McRae, with Ari Vatman we got. And do you know how we got Ari Vatman? He was an MEP at the time, and he always wanted to meet John Hume. So we persuaded John Hume to come to the event. He had no interest in it whatsoever, but the two of them sat on a park bench and talked politics, and that's how we got Ari Vatman.
Fantastic.
And then I wanted to get the 8 Grand Prix drivers of the modern era, of the Irish Grand Prix drivers who raced in Grand Prix together. And we got everyone except Tommy Byrne. And poor Tommy, he was going through a rough time in America at the time. We offered him a flight, hotels, everything, but he didn't want to come. And I was very disappointed, because we had a car and all matched for him. And we would have had the full set if he'd been there. Yeah. But when he was back last year at the Sparks Tour, he came to me and he took me aside and he said, look, Plum, I owe you a big apologies. I would have loved to have been at your Stormont too. He said, but I just wasn't in the right place. My head wasn't in the right place. Mm-hmm. He said, I couldn't face meeting the others and seeing the successes that they'd had. And I said, Tommy, 100%. And I admire him so much for telling me that,
Yeah.
But all the others were there, And then we had a problem. We had a problem with Eddie Irvine, because he just left for Ferrari and was going to Jaguar. Hadn't gone there yet. So we were going to put him in. Yeah. And how were we going to get him there? Because it's notoriously difficult to get there, And so we got a D-type Jaguar and put him in. That solved that problem. Getting him there, I had all the boys. Archie was still doing the Grand Prix, you see, and I'd Michael Cairn every Grand Prix. I said, you're going to Plums do? You're going to Plums do? You see? I said, oh, I've heard about it. And eventually I got his private number. And I thought, I've got to time this perfectly. So 6 weeks to the event. I got his number and I rang him up, and he was on a rowing machine or a bicycle or something. He was training, and he said, "Who's that?" I said, "Plum Tyndall." "Oh, I was expecting a call from you. Yeah. I said, "Well, are you coming? Are you coming to this event?" He says, I said, "Can I sell my merchandise there?" I said, "Yeah, certainly. Yeah, no problem." "Okay, then." He says, "I'll come." Yeah. I said, "Great, Eddie. That's brilliant." He says, "I said, have you got a woman under there?"
I was going to say, you sure he wasn't real?
But he laughed at that, and he came, and that was the set. It was great. And we got a friend of Arnie Black's, who I was working in the historic racing car section, Formula One in England, and his contact brought all the Grand Prix cars of their era. We matched them all. We had 8 Grand Prix cars there that day, running up Stormont. Yeah, quite a day.
Yeah, incredible. And the whole motivation around that was completely different. If we go back, just rewind the clock 3 years, I just want to read something from the article that we read from earlier with Sammy Hamill. So the 1997 Ulster Rally was just a few hours away, and I was getting ready to leave the office for the City Hall start when Plum rang. I was surprised because I knew he'd be in final briefing with a team of cameramen and reporters covering the event for his RPM television programme, but I was stunned by what he called to tell me. "Sammy, Plum, I have cancer. I need your help." None of the usual banter, just straight out. Now, we know the only reason I'm bringing this up on this Friday night where we tell good stories, and it's all about lifting people, getting away from COVID and all the other crap that goes on. But this was a good story in the end at the time. And the fact that your esophagus cancer, I have so many people who didn't make it through that I know, and it's rare for people to do it. But we have no comprehension of what you went through at that particular time. And again, just the recovery from it, the psychological element to it. Just a quick couple of minutes on it, Plum, really, because we don't want to dwell on it tonight. I think it's just fantastic to celebrate, and the motivation to put together that Millennium event was because this could potentially have been a completely different story. And the fact that you're here talking, recalling the stories, especially about that monumental event in your life, well, two, one really bad one and real highlight that just blew everything out of the water.
Well, three people saved my life. My local doctor lived in Eton Trillick Road. He diagnosed it, and then Jim McGuigan, who did the operation, and his assistant Gareth, who still I'm in touch with to this day. They saved my life, and there was McGuigan was a blunt man, and he told me straight. He said, "Look, you have a 1 in 3 chance of surviving this, So you were in there, you're on the conveyor belt. There's nothing you can do about it. And anybody who has a serious illness knows this. But the NHS is they're unbelievable. And the news tonight that they're getting a 1% pay rise is disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. Yeah. If we have any humanity in us at all, the people that saved the country and saved so many people's lives, that is an insult above all insults. But I won't go on about that. But anyway, the recovery was slow, and I had so many friends. But I wanted to do this. I wanted to do this payback thing, and I was delighted when Jim McGuigan, my surgeon, accepted the invitation to hand out the prizes, and that was great. We made some money for the charity, and he got a public thank you, and I mean, I'm not going to go into the day by day horrors of going through it. It's actually in the book, but to come out the other side of that, I'm so lucky. I mean, that's now more than 20 years ago. Well, 25 years ago now. I'll be 78 next week. So those are bought years, and thanks to those people.
Yeah.
McCreary was the doctor. McQuiggan was the surgeon.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Gareth Stewart was his assistant.
And 3 years later, putting on that fantastic event, and again, just a mark of the man who decided that he'd give back and pay back, and that's it, and continue to do it with Deja Vu as we go through it. And thinking of others who are going through similar struggles, so Barley Barable fighting the big sea.
Exactly, and I'm in touch with Barry. I've been communicating with Barry, and he's a fighter. He's a real fighter. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Andrew Bush, do you remember Jan Gear and Rocco?
Yes, that was the 2001. That was a real panic year because that was foot and mouth. Not 2000. Yes, 2001, foot and mouth. And so we suddenly didn't have a program. We suddenly didn't have a business, So we had to use our ingenuity to travel and get programs. And one of them was the Luxembourg Rally, and Jan Gear was there was
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I got it now. Yeah,
Gear, Ian Greer. They called him Jan Gear.
Jan Gear.
And he turned up in the Corolla, the Toronto to Corolla in Luxembourg. And the Belgium champion was there, and Bruno, I think you called him Bruno, somebody. And he had an identical car. I'd never heard of this Irishman, And the Irishman proceeded in blowing him away.
Sorted him out.
And Bruno would hardly take an interview from us. He was humped. Boy, was he humped, And then Dean Beckett was the co-driver. And so they got the name wrong, Jan Gear. And they had a big ceremonial finish in a sort of big hangar with an arch and fireworks, and flags, and national anthems and everything. And so Jan Gear arrived to Dean Beckett and to play the Irish national anthem, which didn't please Dean, I don't think, at all.
Yeah.
But it was a great weekend, and it was a great drive. He was a great driver. Underestimated. Yeah.
Local man to you as well, wasn't he?
Yeah. Not very well either, I believe.
Is he not? Okay. Well,
wish him good luck.
Very much so. Yeah. Who would you like to have interviewed but didn't? From Jenny.
Gilles Villeneuve.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, my hero.
What a boy.
Yeah. I had one stage, I had the whole hallway covered in Gilles Villeneuve prints. Complete hero.
Complete sideways as well, like a Formula One driver who knew how to drive a car sideways. Remember, John Lyons will be sitting there agreeing with us. I know he was a big Villeneuve fan.
That Monaco Grand Prix that I commentated, he won in the Ferrari, which was the turbocharged Ferrari, which was a brute of a thing. Nobody else could tame it. And into Tapak, the left-hander along by the harbour there was a bump. There was a bump just as you came in. And everybody else was coming up, lifting off, feathering a little bit. Gilles, bump, through it.
Again, like a car like that, the turbo on it is like a switch change, it's like a switch throttle, and there's no progression at all. But he could hold it in a slide.
Very early days of turbos, so that they weren't at all sophisticated.
Yeah, you have none, have it all. So Mark Johnston's asking about Toivonen, who Toivonen was just an incredibly fast driver, like probably one of the fastest drivers that you'd have saw, I thought.
The fastest in rally.
This story about the rental kart track, that did actually happen, didn't it? I don't think it was a big mystery. Yeah, it was out in the open.
Toivonen had come from Italy where he'd had crashed, I think, a Lancia. And he hadn't had a very good season. And his English wasn't brilliant. And I interviewed him at the start in Belfast, Leisure Centre. And I think it was lost in translation. He read me wrong. And he took a bit of offense at it, really,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I was getting a fairly frosty reception from the whole way down into Waterford. And then the Rothmans put on this karting night, in a local park.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 4 heats and semi-final and so on. And anyway, I, as I have been most of my life, was enormous, and I couldn't get my bum into the seat properly. But I won my heat anyway, and which meant that I was going to come up against Toivonen in the final or the
Oh,
semi-final.
you took him out? Jesus, man.
No. It was in his heat that he got injured, so we never went head to head.
But you would have had him anyway, wouldn't you?
Oh,
No better, man.
We bums.
No better, we bums.
But he commentated when I was out, and I commentated when he was out, and the whole mood changed, and we became good pals, you know.
Yeah.
But then the poor man hurt his wrist badly in his heat and never made the final. The whole thing was cancelled. But and that was a big problem, as you know, for him.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I remember at the time. What a boy he was! Like an incredible. And I remember him interviewing Kankkunen. Do you remember that in the World Championship rally once? I think it was Kankkunen. So he had form interviewing people. Cynthia Fury was confirmed by Bishop Tyndall in Ramelton. Did you know
There's
that?
another one. No, I didn't.
There you go. And Cha-Ching sold another DVD. Brilliant. They're flying off the shelves tonight. Was it Boyd had the four-wheel drive Capri? Adrian Boyd, did he have a four-wheel drive Capri?
No, two-wheel drive, the one I bought. Yeah.
Yeah. But he's just wondering if there was a four-wheel drive one.
There was a four-wheel drive Capri that rallycrossed in Glidden, and Roger Clark, I think, drove it.
Right. So it wasn't Adrian Hughes then. No. So Chris, any memories of Winston Henry, Reggie Britton races? Yeah, Winston Henry, my hero. Winston Henry was the reason I got into rallying Plum. Yeah, 10-year-old with Paul Mulderew walked a quarter of a mile outside Market Hill, 9 o'clock on a Friday night. This car came. I thought it was a race. I didn't know anything about it. Like spotlights, you can imagine. Mark 1 Escort it was back then. And off he went, and we were hooked. That was it. Borrowed Paul's Maxi, Dad's Maxi. He was 15 at the time. Off we went to petrol. Oh, I can't go and tell anyone of stories, but that was it. And I didn't realise that Winston Henry actually, he lived in Market Hill, very close beside it. But that was the start of it. Of course, you see the car next day, all covered in mud, and just fantastic, lovely. You remember Winston, of course, and Reggie Britton and those guys.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Greetings from Ballina from Peter Fye. Looking good. Great history from a legend of motorsports. Think we all need Island Motorsports Museum with our unique history. Run back to road and tractors. Keep the revs up. Yeah, thanks, Matty.
Keep the revs up. Yeah.
Plum, the voice who first told me what a legend my dad was when I watched Coleman rallies back 1984 circuit, Davy Evans.
Okay. Right. Davy Evans, yeah.
Yeah. Indeed. Yeah. Also, always look forward to RPM. Great show for Irish Motorsport. Fair play. Thanks, you. Plumline cartoons are great too. Yeah, we haven't talked about the cartoons.
I haven't done those for years and years. I used to do them in Wheels magazine. But I haven't. I've one in the book that I quite like, which was Ramelton stage. And the car going off in the first corner, going through the pub door, and the two farmers running up and saying, "Come on, John, they're open."
Oh, God, I love it. So we should have there's a load more of those stories where we should have been heading. Bobby Wills has gone all serious on us. What can be done with Irish rallying to bring us back to the coverage of the old days? Can we do anything, Bob? Or Plum?
You can always do something, yeah.
You can always do something,
yeah. The problem is you need an insider in one of the big organizations, you know, UTV, BBC, or RTE. That helps. Michael O'Callaghan was an insider.
Chairman's wife syndrome, isn't it? You know, where you just need somebody in there.
And you need somebody to push like that. But I don't know. I mean, it's changed so much. The days of, you know, that we did in RPM of highlight television, they've sort of gone. People want everything instant now. And just the caliber of the events and the sponsorship of the events aren't big enough to support that sort of instant live stage stuff, really, unless you do it in a very cheap way, as Bobby very successfully did on the Circuit of Ireland.
2016,
yourself.
Yeah.
That got very good audiences, but it's the problem is I mean, nobody talks about the RSC rally. It's never in any of the papers. World Rallying isn't in any of the British papers. You know, where's it gone wrong that way? Has it got so specialised? Is television so compartmentalised now that if you're a rally fan, you watch, you know, your channel of World Rally. If you're a Formula One fan, you watch Sky. Is it all into components? If you're golf, you watch something else. You know, is that the way it's gone?
I think there's so much time pressure on people, Plum, and you think of kids with hobbies, and they're just trying to get kids to all the after-school activities that they go to. That's before they come back home and go up into the bedroom and start doing the computer stuff and talk to their mates after they do their homework. It's something that's a bit of a minefield, and it's something I want to investigate a little bit more. But yeah, it's just the diversity of everything that grabs people's attention now. Is something
I think the other problem is it's so expensive to get into. Hence the popularity of these lanes rallies.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you've got to spend about $3,000 before you even sit in your car in equipment. You know.
Okay. Yeah.
And you know, it's just. I mean, you shot that shot of me in the Mini. The wheel spats were the main thing I bought, and the road cage somebody gave me. I just spent nothing on preparing that car.
Yeah.
Other than cleaning it. You know,
Stevie Whitford was on a few weeks ago where they've got these micros, so $15,000 for a decent micro with a proper box in it. You know, if you're an electrician or a plumber and you want to go rallying, then that's something that's affordable. You know, get your lad out into the workshop with you at night, and you get, you know, Stage by Stage podcast on. Have a listen to it as you go. It's brilliant. Right, Tommy has said, I haven't seen the Group B cars on the stages. How did watching the same cars in the hands of like a Shanka compare and cover in Rallycross? Yeah, Rallycross is just crazy. It's just, I love Rallycross.
I was involved with Modelo when I was doing the PR for them when we brought the
European rounds.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, and I always have a little thing about Rallycross though. I hated to see those beautiful Group B cars getting beaten up, you know. But one of the great stories of all my time was at that European Rallycross when Mitty Alamaki, I think it was, had the T16 Peugeot.
Yeah.
And they brought a busload of people up from Cork to see the event. And this guy, Owen O'Sullivan, he was sitting watching this thing, and they opened up the whole back of it, you know, and there were all the twin turbos and everything, and he was peering in, and Nitamaki turned to him and said, "You like car?" He says, "Could you tell me?" He says, "Was that a van once?"
Bit cheaper insurance, wasn't it, at the time? But I remember then we were paying €35 to get into it, or punt, or whatever it was at the time.
Yeah.
But it was the best value that you could have got.
Oh, terrific.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is a video. This is the bit I remember. The 007 thing. That's the Mark II yellow Droop Nose Escort, which
ahead of the winners, and we all wore ridiculous hats.
Yeah. Well-deserved lap of honour, Plum. You've always had the best stories, yeah. Chris McLean said Brian Patterson was in that story as well. Jimmy, 6R4 in racing colours, yeah. Remember standing in the Galbog Road outside Dromore as a young kid. That's a bumpy old road, that one. Watching the Rothmans Porsches, Circle Arm, Billy Coleman inside.
The famous headlight off, remember? In front of the onboard,
yeah. Robert Lawson, the Modern Days, Rothman's Red Bull. Okay. Another brilliant programme. Thanks for that. Another great evening. Thanks, Michael. Memories of Tommy Byrne, Plum. We'll come back to that in a minute, if that's okay. Go on ahead. Just give us your memories of Tommy. Tommy, just incredible talent. As you said, he had his issues over the years, but for somebody who could turn the wheel and press the pedals, it's hard to beat him, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. But he was, you say you've got to be hungry in sport. He was ravenous, you know, and he just had loads of old junk that he drove the brains out of. Well, that was the beauty about Formula Ford. I mean, even with a 2-year-old car and an absolute brilliant drive, you could get it there, you know. But you know, it's so sad. I mean, I watched him win the British Formula 3 Championship at Brands Hatch. I was there when he drove Formula 3 at Monaco. He just, like the guy, didn't have the background at the time to be able to handle it, and he had the talent, but not that. And I mean, the story of him losing the Marlborough Drive was legendary, But it was nice to see. It was nice to see him come back and get a few drives, and he is getting a few drives. James Hagan has been very generous to him and given him a few drives, and that's really nice to see him, because he's a real nice guy, and he's learned his lessons, and he regrets a lot of it, but he's making a living, and he's still in motorsport.
Good man. Speaking of ex-F1 drivers or F1 drivers, what about Martin Donnelly, Plum? What's the latest?
Well, that was so sad, and I heard the news. I remember on the circuit retro, actually, I heard the news in the grounds of Sleeve Donard. I mean, I was really close to Martin, and well, it's so sad, yet it's so wonderful, because he is the biggest survivor, I think, of all time out of a crash in Formula One. Yeah. So there he is, still alive, still enjoying himself, and still in motorsport.
Yeah, still going. Great show, guys. Great music associations again, as your love of music. Some of the top ones are the Final Countdown for the circuit reports. I'm Only Happy When It Rains, the Galway Rally, Insomnia for the Ulster Rally. So many great reports. Thank you. There's a lot of appreciation here, Plum. Great to go to Deja Vu in Killarney. Met some foreign drivers like Side. Hemi McRae, that must be Jimmy's brother. Bernard Begwing. Brilliant to get some photographs, to get some books, models, and thanks, Gerard. Vaccarella was 88 this week.
Yeah.
Vaccarella. Okay.
Yeah.
Big night in Chattanooga 20 years ago this weekend. You sang all night, according to Paul Goodman. You'd be good for a tune. Sunday would be great. I think Bobby's saying that's for the end of the show. We'll try and get it done before Sunday. I think it was a go-kart in Galway. Tyven hurt his back. And I think it was Galway. It was Waterford, wasn't it?
Yeah, Waterford, yeah.
Yeah, Tuesday's Plum's birthday. It is, yeah. Brilliant chat. Must do it again, guys. Yeah, well, keep it going. Best show since RPM without it. We're far from that. Listening to you lads on Friday night is better than any pub to me. You say that. You say that. Wait till the pub opens. It won't be hard to put it in a big screen or TV in the pub. Win-win for everybody. Like, everybody's going to listen to our ramblings when they're there. We need a new batch of RPM stickers to the back window of the car. Yeah, somebody was saying this recently, that you knew that people in your town were into motorsport when an RPM sticker, and you could have a wee chat with them and say,
in the early days when we started them, it was like giving away pound notes nearly, we used to go down, particularly in Cork and Kerry, we used to come up there, any stickers? Any stickers? And so, yeah.
I was guilty of stickers as well. I used to write to, all the different suppliers. So David Sutton Motorsport, I remember getting a brochure from Sutton, and I told him about it when in 2003, and a Mark II Group 4 Escort, proper everything in it. So Terry Hoyle, Terry Samuels, all the stuff on it, 26 grand. I can't remember what age I'd have been, 14, 15 at the time. So what are we talking there? Probably about 78, 79. It was the black Escort as well. Stapleries, I think, was the one that he had in the photograph. So Roger Clark, Motorsport, used to get stickers from them. And of course, the Lindsay cars and all those Ford ones, the RS stickers. Great. Love to sticker me. Plum, the story about the driver interview after the snow in the 94 circuit, was it the golf driver?
Driver interview.
Have a think about that. We'll come back to that one. What about Frank Williams on the pallet?
Oh, that's Owen McGonagall. That's the two boys from Cork. McGonagall is known as, that's his nickname. His owner Sullivan is his real name, and Marty Whelan. They always chummed together, and they were total rally fans. No interest in racing.
This McGonagall.
Yeah, they decided to go to Silverstone just to see what they could do, what they could get away with, how they could get in. There was a purpose of being there.
The biggest blag.
There's a half-hour show in it. It's the funniest thing. They bought a genuine ticket, went through the fence, sold it to a mate outside. So there were no cost. Went up to this guy who was at the control of the paddock, and they said, we need to go in there now. And the chap said, oh, no, you can't. He said, and the fellow looked at me and he says, you have no miraculous medals, badges. So he said, He said, well, no, why do you need to go in? He said, I need to go in there. He said, my brother's in there. He said, well, what does he look like? He looks a lot like my mother. And this went on and on and on and on. And eventually they got into the paddock. Then they got into the hospitality area. They had, as he said, tea and stickies with Maria in the Jordan motorhome. And there we were sitting looking out the window, and they were all going by. There was that fellow, the land speed record holder. There was so and so. And then who goes past on the pallet but Frank Williams?
On the pallet?
Yeah. And it just goes on and on. And, they did so, and I'll be here all night. But the final bit was, and they had such a wonderful day. And we were leaving, and we were nearly got killed. And I said, what happened to you? He says, we nearly got run over by the red horse box.
Wow, a proper expensive horse box, that one, I'd have thought as well.
Yeah.
Ivan Fury reckons he's good night tonight. Thanks. We're glad we entertained you, or I didn't. Plum entertain you. My God, I'm humbled to share my birthday with Plum, Ronan Cox said. There you go.
Oh, very good.
Great stories, well done. Who else do you share your birthday with, Plum? Do you know?
I have no clue.
I think I share mine with Lady Helen Windsor. She's the exact same age as me. That's the only one I know. Don't know anybody else. There's a lot of laughing, get that. Folks, that's about it. Plum, have you got anything that you want to cover off before we go? So people can buy all this RPM stuff behind you. What's the best way to do that?
Just on the website, www.rpm-motorsport.com. Mm-hmm. Still plenty of DVDs and books and things. But no, to wind off, I've been incredibly lucky, both health-wise and in a life that I've been able to do exactly what I want and get paid for it, make a living out of it. And I've met so many good friends, made so many good friends, and got so much satisfaction out of it, of all forms of motorsport. And I still thoroughly enjoy it. I mainly go to historic meetings now and things like that. But still love wandering around the paddock, looking at the machinery, meeting old friends. And of course, Deja Vu is perfect for that. So all I can say is thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You see the way that people hold you in great fondness, Plum, over the years, and still going strong, still plenty to do, and keeping the hand in, still doing stuff around motorsport, which is great. Folks, as I said to you, stagebystage.com/blog if you want to see any of the previous shows. So Niall McShay one where we did 3 hours with him, Bobby Willis, Ari Vatanen, Fred Gallagher, Rory Kennedy, all of them are there as regards the recent live shows. And of course they go back to May of last year. Likewise with the podcast, if you want to learn a little bit about from successful people, what they have done, maybe you can pick up some tips along the way for that. Likewise, next week, we have Kenny McKinstry and Robbie Philpott. If you've got any questions for those guys, don't be afraid to send them through. info@stagebystage.com for that. And that's it, folks. So we've just scraped over 3 hours. Can you believe it's 3 hours, Plum?
Amazing, yeah.
It goes quick, doesn't it?
It does. I hope it goes quick for other people too.
Well, there's still over 200 people watching 3 hours in, and that's just incredible. And you start to see the numbers that happen in the back of this, tantamount to the guests that I get on, and just people love rally stories in these times where things are a bit mad.
Yeah.
Plum, you stay where you are for a second. We'll get the finish done here, and folks, we'll see you next Friday night. In the meantime, remember there's that podcast from Henry Catchpole if you want to have a listen to that. Otherwise, we'll see you at 7:30 next Friday night with Kenny McKinstry and Robbie Philpott. In the meantime, Plum, what have they to do?
You've got to you got to think positive, test negative, and keep the revs up.
You do.